Rakshika, you can start now. Yeah.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. A very warm welcome to all of you for joining us today for this timely and insightful session on impact of Middle East conflict on Sri Lanka's government, economy and society, organized by the Institute of Certified Management Accountants of Sri Lanka. We are delighted to have such a distinguished gathering of speakers, panelists, and participants. Before we begin, kindly note you may post your questions in the Q&A for answers during the panel discussion. All the speakers, moderators, and panelists are requested to switch on the camera for a quick photograph at the beginning.
Right. Some of them are not there, but
You can do it, I think, at the end.
then yeah, we'll see.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Yeah, we'll take one now and then maybe later.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. Okay. Fine. Rakshika. Okay. Over to you.
Okay. It is now my pleasure to invite Professor Lakshmanar Vatavala, founder and president of CMA Sri Lanka, to deliver the welcome address and introduction. Sir, may I kindly invite you to take the floor. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Rakshika. Good afternoon to all of you. Let me welcome you to our webinar that we are having on the impact of the Middle East conflict on Sri Lanka, government, economy, and society. This is a hot topic that is being discussed by everyone, and I'm sure it will be useful to all those who will be attending. I know that there was a large number that have registered, almost over 600, but at least maybe 50% is a normal number that may be coming. So let me welcome all of them. Let me also welcome our panel of speakers. We have very eminent speakers here with us, all our panel, the three panel speakers of Dr. W.A. Vijayawardena, who the former deputy governor of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka, Dhananath Fernando, who is the CEO of the consulting company, and of course, Mr. Talal Rafi, and they are backed by a very, I think, powerful and eminent panel, so which will be introduced by our compeer Rakshika. So if you really look at this, we will find that if a prolonged Middle East crisis would have serious repercussions on the government, the economy, and of course the society, that's the real people who will ultimately have to see what is happening. The disruption of the oil and gas supplies create a serious difficulties for the economy, affecting all sectors of the economy. If you look at it, tourism, the maritime and aviation sectors, the exports, construction, foreign remittances, and of course the SME sector, who will all maybe experience great difficulties. And one of the reasons is due to the higher costs. So you will experience maybe the higher fuel prices coming in, the higher transport costs, the increased electricity costs, and of course the higher insurance charges and freight, and maybe even on the agriculture sector where the fertilizer costs. So there'll be a corresponding increase in all these and a spiraling cost increase as a result of this. And this is something that as management accountants, we have to see how we can really control it and also maybe advise our clients how this has to be done. And this was also one of the main reasons that we organized this webinar. And you can also see that the burdens of the society will also increase and the cost of living will also spiral up, which will really be something which is hurting everyone. Now, actually, if you see one of the main things which I'm sure all our speakers will talk is, of course, the the war between Iran and Israel and the US coming in, and the closure of the Hormuz, the pathway for ships, so that this is really disrupting the oil cargo and will create a lot of shortages. We are having the increased prices and the shortages coming in. So these are areas I'm sure that our speakers and panelists will speak on, and even the oil prices which are going up, and even in Sri Lanka where we have now started the QR system. But whether you see, earlier we introduced the QR system. As a result, we did not have foreign exchange to import. But now it will be a different picture where not only the prices are going up, but there will be a shortage. So then how you are going to get it, how you are going to control it, how you are going to use it. These are areas that we will have to really discuss. Then, of course, the major exports. Now we have so many of them who are here on the panel. They will discuss on the impact on the major exports, such as the apparel, the tea sector, then the foreign exchange earnings from the tourism sector, agriculture, then now the food security is to be maintained. So all these areas will really be of, and the area of costs and pricing. This automatically going up will also result in great problems, and the SME sector, how they are really going to thrive, how they are really going to manage. Then the government has already imposed 1 day off, maybe for the government servants, but I don't know whether the private sector would be able to do that, because they are the people who will be generating the industrial activity, the foreign exchange earnings, and all these, plus, of course, the agricultural sector, which will have to produce in order that the people could be fed. So these are some of the main areas which I thought that I'll bring to you, but I must thank our eminent panel of speakers and panelists, because I know that they are quite busy, but certainly because of our, maybe to give their knowledge, they have come here. So I must thank all of them for the great sacrifice they have made, and also the great service they are doing, not only to the professional community, but also all those who are in the corporate sector, business sector, and everyone, because many of them are attending this webinar and that they will benefit from it. So uh, with that, I would hand back to our compeer so that she can then introduce our speakers so that they can get started. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for your opening remarks. We will be now moving on to our first presentation. It is my privilege to introduce Dr. W.A. Vijayawardena, former Deputy Governor of Central Bank of Sri Lanka. Dr. Vijayawardena is a well-respected economist with extensive experience in monetary policy and economic analysis. Sir, the screen is over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I will, in fact, speak just for 20 minutes. And there is this, eminent panel who is there to, talk on various aspects of the impact of this war on Sri Lanka. I will draw your attention to the impact on the government of Sri Lanka and the Sri Lanka as a whole because of the rising prices. So Wattawala very eloquently he elaborated on the impact of the Middle East war on the increase in the energy prices, which the world will have now bear at a higher cost. And my understanding is that we are still in the middle of the war, and the war is not yet over, and the prices are continuing to rise. For example, last night when Israel attacked the major oil facility in Iran, and when Iran retaliated by attacking another major oil facility in Qatar, immediately the oil prices have gone up by about, say, $15. Both prices, the Brent as well as WTI, both have gone up by about $15. And it will continue to increase despite the fact that the USA and the World International Energy Authority are releasing their buffer stocks, because the buffer stocks are not sufficient to meet the big demand coming from the global economy for energy. And if the if the war is prolonged, as Professor Wattawala has just mentioned, if it is if it had been completed within a day or two, we wouldn't have been in this particular situation. But if the war is prolonged, as it is going to be prolonged, So the buffer stock, release of the buffer stock about 400 million barrels will not be sufficient to meet the entire global energy demand. So as a result, the energy prices are going to go up, and they are in now. Of course, they have gone up, above the $100 per barrel level, and WTI the Brent was recorded about say $115 this morning. WTI around say $97, but it's going to go up. Now, as Sri Lanka, which is in fact a country living from hand to mouth, because we are all types of imports that we make. What we do is we are having a system called just-in-time, purchase system. Whenever we need something, we buy it, and we don't have capacity to store up or capacity to buy in advance because we don't have financial resources and we don't have the capacity to store them. So therefore, it's a just-in-purchase type of transaction. So this has affected very badly to our energy requirements also, because as it is, as the Sri Lanka Petroleum Corporation and the Ministry of Petroleum Resources have pronounced, our stocks are sufficient to meet about say 30 to 40 day time requirement. And our current problem is, even if we have money or even if we have purchased this energy from another source, we don't have tankers to carry them to Sri Lanka. So this is a big problem. And as it is, the prices might go up. So its impact on the government and its relations to the government will be discussed by me, and all the other panelists and the keynote speakers will talk to the other side. In this case, I will equate Sri Lanka to a family which is having a credit card. And that credit card can operate in the domestic economy as well as in the international economy. Now, if a family buys everything on its requirements by using the credit card, at the end of the day, the family will have to pay the credit balance, and therefore it can continue with the credit card. If it cannot pay the credit balance, on one fine day, the family will find that it cannot use this credit card anymore, and as a result, it will not be able to buy the goods and services which it wants to buy from the rest of the economy, so that the family will be doomed. Now, similar situation has arisen in the case of Sri Lanka also. Sri Lanka is also operating with a very large credit card. In the domestic economy, what we normally do is, since we have a huge deficit in the government budget, all the goods and services that we buy for the government service, for example, consumption goods as well as the investment goods, we buy them on credit, because by issuing government debt in the domestic economy. And when it comes to the payment of interest out of the current revenue, we meet it. But when it comes to the repayment of the government debt that matures during the year, we don't have money to do that. What we do is we reissue the debt, and as a result, we call it refinancing of the debt. But what happens is that once the economy is unable to meet the government's requirements, number one, money for the payment of interest, as well as the reissuing capacity of the government, if it is constrained because there are problems with within the economy. In that time, what would happen is the government of Sri Lanka will not be able to use this credit card. As it is, the war in the Middle East is exactly creating a condition within the domestic economy where the government is unable to use the credit card. One reason is, now you may be aware that the central bank is now working on an inflation target, where the central bank had agreed with the Minister of Finance in September 2023 to maintain the inflation rate at 5%, and central bank is permitted to go below or above 5% by 2 percentage points. So therefore, the inflation rate should be between 2% and 7%. But what has happened is, in the past, since the central bank had, continued with the drastic monetary policy measure supported by the government at that time to disinflate the economy, because the economy was running at an inflation rate of 70% around, say, the middle of 2023. And that particular high inflation rate was brought down by the central bank, which we call the disinflation of the economy. And the government also supported the central bank's move by following an equally restrictive fiscal policy by the government. So as a result, we were able to bring down the high inflation to a level of, say, 0%. And in some months, it actually became negative. Now, what has happened here is the central bank has to now maintain the inflation target between 3% and 7%. The bank has not been able to do that, and the bank has been actually brought before Parliament, which has to examine why central bank has failed to do that. Had been, very strict on the central bank now. The central bank will have to reflate the economy. When we call the reflating it, the central bank will have to increase the aggregate demand through monetary policy. But if the government doesn't adopt an equivalent expansionary fiscal policy, what happens is that the central bank is unable to increase the aggregate demand on its own. So central bank has been there below this minimum level of 3%. And central bank is now trying to increase it by having a particular monetary policy. But what has happened is this, because of the Middle East war, with the increases in the energy prices, prices of king gas, and also the prices of other essential consumption items like medicines and all that, when they go up, what would happen is that the central bank will find it that the inflation rate has automatically going up to the level of, between 3% and 7%. So it's a blessing in disguise for the central bank right now. But what would happen is if it goes above 7%, central bank will have to adopt a restrictive monetary policy. When it adopts a restrictive monetary policy, it will have to increase the interest rate. When it increases the interest rate, the government will not be able to borrow at a lower interest rate as it is doing right now. So the honeymoon of having a low interest rate regime by the government will be over. And what will happen is when the interest rates go up on the government paper, the government will not be able to this credit card anymore. That's one area where the government is vulnerable. Second one is that if the economy doesn't grow because of the impact of the Middle East war in Sri Lanka, because the major inputs are being for the growth in the economy, like energy and fertilizers, various other inputs that the Sri Lankan industry and commerce is using. If they become short supply, there will be negative economic growth in the country. And as a result, the government will not be able to borrow money from the rest of the economy also, because there is no enough liquid cash. So as a result, what I find is that the credit card which the government has been using very, freely to finance its domestic expenditure will not be available, and it will not be reusable. Same thing will happen to the international side of the credit card also. Now, in the international side of the credit card also, since Sri Lanka had been running a deficit in the current account of the balance of payments, we had a surplus, temporary surplus in 2025, but that's not a repeatable one. So as a result, Sri Lanka had been borrowing from outside to meet its, requirement of all the imports, consumption goods, as well as investment goods, and also the repayment of the debt. Now, like in the domestic economy, Sri Lanka had been paying its interest on the foreign loans out of the earnings of foreign exchange, which it does annually, and it had been doing it, and it is a part of the expenditure items in the current account of the balance of payments. But since there is a deficit in the current account of the balance of payment, that has been financed by borrowing money, the Sri Lanka will face two problems. One problem is the refinancing facility, because Sri Lanka had been repaying its maturing debt by borrowing from abroad, which we call the refinancing, and also Sri Lanka's rising balance of payments deficit has to be funded out of borrowing. So therefore, Sri Lanka has to use the credit card not only to refinance the maturing debt, but also to finance the rising debt. Now, the debt is to rise as a result of the war in the Middle East. On account of the petroleum resources, the Sri Lanka had been actually using annually about, say, 42 million barrels of petroleum products per annum. And before the Middle East crisis, the prices were around, say, $70 per barrel. But if the prices go up by $10, the bill, the import bill on petroleum products alone will come to about, say, 420 million US dollars. So if it goes up by, say, 30 US dollars as it has happened now, the bill will be about 1 billion US dollars. And now, right now, as it is, the bill might even go up to 2 to 2.5 billion US dollars and additional expenditure which Sri Lanka has to meet. So as a result, the credit card has to be used in order to fund these additional requirements. At the same time, the cooking gas prices have gone up. At the same time, the fertilizer prices will go up because the 30% of the world consumption of fertilizer will come from this Strait of Hormuz, which has been blocked by Iran. So as a result, those inputs also will go up. What it means is there will be a severe strain on the balance of payments of the country. And what I find is that Sri Lanka is unable to use this international credit card to meet these requirements. So we are in a very precarious situation now. As a result, what we must do is now as a nation, because this is not a problem created by the present government, and you cannot blame the present government for that. It's a problem that has been forced on us by the international community, specifically the people, the countries that are involved in the current Middle East crisis, Middle East war. And as a result, we will have to categorize it as an unexpected external shock. That unexpected external shock will affect the domestic side of the government financing as well as the international side of the government financing. Now, with the decline in the economic growth, because everybody is expecting that there will be a recession in the global economy, Sri Lanka will not be able to refinance also, even if its credit card is usable. Second one is it will not be able to meet all the requirements, import requirements, by using its current reserve levels also. Because of this reason, what I find is that the credit card is not usable in the international market as well as in the domestic market. In the domestic market, the greatest problem that we will be facing is that we will have inflation. At the same time, we have a recession in the economy because now you may have seen that the government had been announcing in 2025, the country had attained an real economic growth of 5%. But if you look at the real GDP that underlies the 5% economic growth, which is about, say, 13.1 trillion Sri Lanka rupees, is well below by about 1 percentage point from the highest real GDP that Sri Lanka had attained in 2018. So what would happen is that if the economy is hit very drastically by the increases in the inputs, we have low economic growth. So low economic growth associated with inflation is known as stagflation. The stagflation will lead to the high unemployment because there will be job losses. At the same time, the poverty levels will go up, and it will also lead to social calamity as well. So that is why I say we cannot simply put the blame and the responsibility of the government to resolve this issue. It is a national issue, and as a nation, all the political parties have to now get together and cooperate with the government in order to find a solution. The solution comes in the form of tightening our belts very drastically, but at the same time permitting the economy to function at the normal level so that whatever the investment goods that are needed for Sri Lanka to buy from the rest of the world, we have to permit that to come into Sri Lanka. At the same time, the local investments will have to also go up. But the consumption side, which we have to do as people, we have to tighten our belts. So for that purpose, we have to cooperate with the government, and I hope that the opposition parties will agree with will support the government on this national issue, because this is not an issue which is faced by the present government alone. It's an issue faced by Sri Lanka. So we'll have to now find a solution together. So I'll finish my presentation here, and thank you very much, and I'll be available if there are any questions arising from this at the time of the panel discussion. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Vijayvardhana, for the insightful presentation. If you all have any questions, please send on the Q&A session. So next, we have Mr. Dhananath Fernando, Chief Executive Officer of Advocata Institute. Mr. Dhananath Fernando is widely recognized for his expertise in public policy and economic reforms. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me and wishing everyone a good afternoon. To begin with, I would like to provide a sort of a framework how we should think about in times like this and what has to expect in the coming months and probably for coming years. In my view, especially these uncertainties becoming quite frequent and often, especially when it comes to the geopolitics, when there are two global superpowers competing for the same number one position. And that brings kind of global uncertainty. And even if you look at the current global context, there are multiple wars that is happening. There's Ukraine-Russia war, there's Pakistan-Afghanistan, there was another war that US kind of wanted to intervene with Venezuela, and there's another conversation with Cuba. So likewise, if you look at all over the world, and there are tensions building between China and Taiwan, especially when it comes to two superpowers attempting to the first place, global uncertainties become quite frequent. So in my view, this is something that we have to expect even in coming years. Even going back to 2025 April tariffs by President Trump, this has becoming quite frequent and often when we look at a kind of a long run arc. That's number one that we need to keep in mind. At the same time, the second external shock that we have to expect is also on the climate front. So climate front and the geopolitical front becoming kind of running the news stories, in my view, in the coming years. The good thing and the bad thing is these tensions can be short run, but of course it can be going for like 30 years or 40 years, depending on how the global superpowers are going to balance. In this context, of course, the impact for tourism, as Dr. Vijayvardhan, impact for Sri Lanka is multifaceted, as Dr. Vijayvardhan mentioned, for the macroeconomy, but also in terms of industries and so on and so forth. So to begin with, of course, with the global fuel prices and the energy prices increasing, it will have a ripple effect across the board. At the same time, it will also have an impact on exports because with the global fuel prices going up, the consumption will come down. Even around the world, people, when they have to spend more money on energy and fuel, they have to cut down consumption on other categories, so which may have an impact on the products that we export, such as apparel, tea, coconut, and all sorts of other exports. So overall, it could be with the global supply chains interruption, the overall impact would be quite negative for the global economy as well as for Sri Lanka and also our exports. And needless to say, the impact on tourism, we are just in the tourism season, and generally the tourists who spend who spend more time in Sri Lanka coming from the European countries, one of the main transit hubs are based in Middle Eastern range. So as a result, that will also be impacted. And of course, with petroleum products, there are other, with fuel, there are other petroleum products also which is connected, like urea and gases like helium, and which is coming also crossing the Hormuz Strait. So as a result, the agriculture to medical equipment, pharmaceutical products, across the board, construction material, plastic, everything will have a cost implication when it comes to the supply chain interruption. At the same time, it will have an impact on the balance of payment, and at the same time, inflation on short run. And generally, the other side that we have to keep in mind is this becomes a big economic crisis or a sequence of crises, mainly based on the policy reforms or like the policy package or like the response that we take for these type of crises. Even if you look at a crisis like COVID, what basically pushed us to a deeper crisis was the policy menu or the policy policy formula that we use to defend or manage the crisis was worse than the crisis itself. So that's where we have to be quite cautious. External shocks happens kind of all the time, but how we are going to respond can cause bigger issues than the crisis itself if we use the wrong tools to manage the crisis. So that's where, as policymakers, we have to be quite cautious. And the final point that I would like to bring is now vulnerable economies like Sri Lanka, these crises can do us quite, extensive harm on the economy because our fundamentals are not right. And there's a conversation, if you recall, after COVID, with China getting affected, there was a conversation about China +1, where the supply chains basically considering countries like Vietnam, India to expand their supply chains. And that can only be attracted and absorbed if our economy was aligned in the right way, even to get benefit from crises like this. Because there's a conversation whether we can attract some of the, the shipping businesses and whether we can reactivate Port City. All that are good, but provided that we are ready with the right policy package, and if we have done the fundamentals right, only those opportunities can be approached and attracted. So while there's a crisis, there are winners and losers. We can be a winner. Of course, this will be, in the short run, it will be quite chaos, as we have already experiencing, because everything will be determined on the length of the war. And it seems now the targets have been quite economic in modern day is not won by the number of soldiers killing by each side. It is basically by instigating fear among the people who are not involved in the war. And that is what exactly happening, where people who are not involved in the war getting the pressure of the war, and that's where the pressure being mounted up by pretty much the both sides. So if we are serious about attracting, making it a positive scenario and attracting investments and getting Sri Lanka into a kind of a positive territory as out of this crisis, we have to do the policy reforms right. My final point is also on the reforms, on the response that we have done so far. I think what we are trying to do at the moment is looking at fuel and fuel rationing through the QR code. I have a bit of a, how shall I say, unpopular view on this. Of course, I think that rationing has been brought in because of the limited fuel reserves that we have. But I think the ration can also be done through the prices. I think without using the pricing, only trying to ration it through a QR code, I doubt that this will be successful. I understand the reasons, because a commodity like fuel, the demand may not be come down as the same percentage if we increase the prices, which I understand because of the inelastic nature of the product. But as per our calculation, even considering even after the recent fuel price increase the government did, if the government keep the profit margins and the taxes at the same rate, the fuel prices ideally has to go up. The petrol prices needs to go up by at about 100 rupees, and the diesel prices need to go up about 200 rupees as per our calculation. So without making the price adjustments, I'm not sure whether we can only manage it only through rationing through a QR code, which I know was implemented with all good reasons. But we should not forget, without adjusting the prices, without allowing the market system, the price signals to work, only trying to do it through a QR code may not be sustainable on long run, is my view. But I understand there may be some level of drastic measures needs to be taken, but I recommend that also considering the prices is also should be one lever, rather than purely considering the rationing of the QR system. And also we have to be quite cautious, especially when the government bring these extreme measures, because it would be very difficult to roll it back. If you recall the vehicle imports, if you recall the Online Safety Act, the PTA, when these measures are being brought, it's very difficult to reverse back. So we have to be also quite cautious when we implement these policies, which is maybe in good intention, but longer period, these are also becoming challenges on a long arc. My final point is also we have to consider, I think the president has made the right decision. He has allowed the private sector also to allow importation of fuel with a short term, like a temporary license. And at the same time, I think the price caps has to be removed. Because now, for an example, if Sinopec or RM Parks, or if a private player has the ability to bring fuel without using the Hormuz Straits from a different channel, of course the prices will be higher. And if the prices are higher, I think they should be able to sell at a higher price. Of course, higher price may not be good news for the people, but if the fuel is not available, that would be a bigger problem than fuel being available at a higher price. And with that, of course, the prices of like the other products or like based on fuel, like it could be the taxi services, the public transport, all those price caps has also to be removed ideally. Because with the prices going up, the market system needs to adjust. But having said that, it doesn't mean when the prices go up, the poorest of the poor will be the most impacted, because already our poverty rates are quite high. We are just recovering from economic crisis. So that impact will also be there. And that's where the government can step in with increasing the Samurdhi or the Ashtasuma social safety net, because that has to be adjusted to absorb the shock for the poorest of the poor. Because fuel prices has to adjust according to the market prices in our view, because 70% of the fuel is basically consumed by the 30% of the people who can afford, or like the wealthiest of the 30% of Sri Lankan population is consuming 70% of the fuel. So accordingly, I think the prices has to adjust, but it doesn't mean that the price hikes won't have other repercussions. The inflation will go up, all the prices will go up, but people will adjust based on the prices if we give the market signals properly. So that's my overall view. Simply, it will have an impact on across the board, but our policy reform package has to be strong enough, and also we should not purely go on a very defensive mode. We should also be actively think of how we can make this crisis also an opportunity and do the reforms right to attract that opportunity in moving forward, not to be completely defensive and worry about, because it's a global crisis and everyone is facing that, and it's a man-made crisis and factors are beyond our control. So it's all about how we are going to adjust. Of course, at the short run, we have to take extreme measures. Everyone has to fasten their seat belts, but it doesn't mean it's the end of the world. We have to also look at how reforms that we need to brought in to make the opportunity with this crisis and move forward. I'll stop from there and looking forward to answer any questions in the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dhananath Fernando, for sharing your valuable perspectives. Our next speaker is Mr. Talal Rafi, economist and expert member of the World Economic Forum. He brings a global perspective to economic developments and policy trends. Sir, we are pleased to have you with us today. The floor is yours. Over to you.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much. First of all, thanks to CMA, especially to Professor Butterwiller for inviting me. It's a pleasure to speak here. So let me start off. So I'll just touch on briefly where is Sri Lanka, then the impact of the Strait of Hormuz, global impact, how will the impact be on Sri Lanka, then a bit on the reserves and debt sustainability before I conclude with some of the opportunities as short as possible. So where is Sri Lanka? I mean, we have to be very thankful because if this came about 2 years ago, we would have been in much greater trouble. So we have done our, though, I mean, there's a lot more to go, 7 billion reserves, primary surpluses. So these are acting as cushions. Though I don't know, the whole thing depends on how long this is going to last. So if it's very long, that may not be enough. But as for now, we'll see. I mean, whenever I come on a forum, I always say Sri Lanka is fine, except if we are hit with external shocks. I think in a panel with Dhananath also I mentioned the same thing, and this is one of those shocks. So we've already had the uncertainty over Trump tariffs early last year. Then we had Hurricane Ditwa. But this one, if it lasts very long, this could be a sort of the biggest hit or a knockout punch. Let me just briefly touch on the impact of the Iran war and the Strait of Hormuz. So this is a very, very important waterway for everyone. 20% of the world's oil passes through this way, which is very crucial. 20% of LNG also passes through this. And this is what people know of. But what few others discuss is that it's also important for many other things. One third of major fertilizers also passes through the Strait of Hormuz. That's urea, nitrogen fertilizer, methanol, and others. So that makes it. Yesterday a UN agency has said there is a possibility of a food crisis coming in, but this would be in the medium term. And about half of the world's seaborne sulfur comes from there. And this is very critical for semiconductors, fertilizer, chemicals, metal processing, etc. So that is important along with the next one. One third of the world's helium is produced by Qatar. So that is also very important because 20% of the helium is consumed by the semiconductor industry. So this is important because the world's largest economy, the US, it's primarily being driven by AI. So there, even if you look at the recent UN report, about 20% of global investments is going to go into data centers. So semiconductors is going to play a large role. So the hit on sulfur, helium, these are going to have major impacts soon. And another thing is also people, when we talk of Strait of Hormuz, we are always talking about ships on the oceans or the Persian Gulf. But what is not understood is not by volume, but by value. One third of global shipments are done by air cargo. That's $8 trillion. And about 25% of that passes through the Gulf Middle East region. So that is also going to have an impact. Very high value things like jewelry, semiconductor, those are done through air cargo. So that's also going to have an impact. And that's a huge one. Not by volume, by value, it's one third of total thing. So how will the global impact be? Of course, I don't have to mention this. The energy shock is going to be great. But it's not as much as before, especially like if you look at the US and others, when you compare to 1973, because now countries have evolved. US, for example, is much less dependent on oil for use itself, even though it's a net oil exporter. And the other thing is vehicles have become more fuel efficient and other factors playing in. So, but it's coming at a very critical time. Sorry, I'm having a bit of a cough. So the global economy is also not in a good shape. We had, since COVID, hit by the Russia-Ukraine war, then the uncertainty over Trump tariffs, and now this. And we've had the slowest growth decade since the 1960s. And so this is going to have a impact. And as Dr. Vijayawardena said, inflation and stagflation. So that's even worse. There is no growth, but there is inflation. So there's going to be higher energy, higher transport costs, production costs will go up. So the fear of stagflation is very high, and we could, if this war goes longer, we could see recession. Sorry. So recession probabilities have already gone up in the US, and central banks may delay cuts or even increase rates. And I'll talk about the effects on this. So when rates in the US are put up, usually the result is that there is an outflow of capital from developing markets, because the safest haven is, of course, gold, but then everyone goes back to the US Treasury market. So that is definitely going to have an impact. And the other thing is also when the US Federal Reserve or the Central Bank of the US increases interest rates, central banks around the world have to respond to that. So that's another thing. So coming on to Sri Lanka, the transmission channels for Sri Lanka. So oil bill will rise. So as Dr. Vijayawardena said, currently oil is trading at around 110. So that if it stays on for 12 months, it will be $2.2 billion. If you're going to estimate it, the IMF report with rates at 70 estimated the oil imports to be $4.5 billion. But I'm saying even if it stays at this price for around 3 to 4 months, the impact on the current account will be around $700 million. That is almost the impact of Cyclone Ditwa. If it's at 110, but already the Qatar energy minister says it could go up to 150. If so, I mean, all it takes is like 5 or 6 weeks, and we could have the impact of Cyclone Ditwa on this. And freight insurance costs increasing, of course, it's going to affect not only our export sectors, but also the imports. So inflation could be imported through that way as well. And fertilizer prices. So goes up. Of course, food inflation would go up. There's already a warning globally, but this will come in the medium term, about 6 months down the road. Weakening currency, that will lead to imported inflation. But then if you try to hold on to the rupee, we could see a slide on the reserves as well. So that's one thing. But unlike Hurricane Ditwa, I mean, there the impact was, I mean, the remittances were not impacted, tourism wasn't impacted, largely, exports not that much. But here it's different. I mean, we are going to get hit on multiple fronts, depending again on how long this lasts. Tourism, of course, it's a major hub. The Gulf areas, like for example, Etihad, Emirates, and other airlines, they bring in most of the, a large portion of tourists. I mean, combined, according to study I read, they bring more than Sri Lankan airlines. So that is definitely one thing. Excuse me, I'm just having a cough. The other thing is also the Middle East. So I mean, in 91, when Saddam Hussein struck Kuwait or anything, we didn't see remittances falling. But this time it's different because actually the Gulf countries are being attacked right now, which wasn't the case before. Of course, in 91, Kuwait was targeted, but other UAE, Qatar, Saudi Arabia were largely peaceful. So, but now it's different because they are being struck. And it's different for three reasons. One is people talk of everything, the global cost of things coming out of the Strait of Hormuz. But few people realize the cost of things going into the Gulf area through the Strait of Hormuz. That is food. So about 80% of Gulf countries' food is imported. So that has to come through. So when the strait is closed, there's going to be a food shortage in the worst case, but there will be food inflation. So this can result in workers being reduced, remittances coming down. Of course, in the worst case situation, of course, any country will prioritize their own citizens over that. In that case, we may have to vacate people. The other thing is also when Iranian missiles are hitting the oil refineries. So already, I think, I'm not sure, Goldman Sachs or JP Morgan, they have predicted that Kuwait and Qatar could see a major drop in GDP, around 15%. And Saudi Arabia could see around 3% and UAE around 5%. So those are major drops, which will lead to remittances coming down. So that is one thing. And the other thing is also desalination plants. 80% of GCC countries' water is made from desalination plants. So if there is an attack by Israel on any desalination plants in Iran and they retaliate, there's going to be chaos. I mean, people won't have water to drink there. So these are some of the factors. So as far as how the impact comes to Sri Lanka, to give a picture, we have a trade deficit of $8 billion. And how do we match that? Of course, remittances and tourism. That's the one that's holding us together. But then remittances, about $3 to $4 billion comes from the Middle East. So even a 20% drop in remittances is going to give us the same hit as Hurricane Ditwa on our current account. So these are some factors to be considered. So on the financial side, as I mentioned, higher global interest rates could push global economic slowdown and rates up everywhere. And as Dr. Vijayawardena said, could also reduce access to international capital markets. And a large number of people will just move on to the developed world. That's where they would look at not just investments, but also the bond markets. So Sri Lanka's external sector, as I already mentioned, the hit could be wide because it's coming on a number of fronts: exports, remittances, tourism, and of course, oil when it comes to imports. Balance of payments will take a hit if this lasts for long, on condition that it goes for long. Of course, if there is a ceasefire even today, it still will take a few weeks for everything to get back to normal. But if this can go on to like another 2 or 3 months, then we are looking at worst case scenarios, which I would not like to state here. So there could be a risk of balance of payments crisis, and if we are in the worst case going to a debt restructuring or another thing, the austerity measures will be much, much worse. If you want to see how it is, I mean, Greece would be a good example. And as far as debt sustainability and others go, so of course, higher oil will have a burden on our reserves. So global slowdown, of course, we are heavily dependent on the European and US markets for exports. So those can come in. And another thing about the structural weakness of our economy is that most of our exports are things which in a recession people tend to buy less. But our imports are mostly oil and others and intermediate goods, of course, which we cannot easily cut down. So those are one thing. But we also, the other factor is also we have reserve targets. I mean, of course, I would say that this crisis is affecting everyone, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Germany, Japan. But unlike most other countries, of course, Pakistan, Egypt, Argentina, they have debt issues. We have the worry about debt sustainability as well. So we have, no, I wouldn't say targets. I mean, these are not conditional, but projections by the IMF. By the end of this year, we have to be at around $8.9 billion. Next year, we have to go up from $8.9 billion to $13.4 billion. So that's a $4.5 billion rise from January 27 to December 27. So in 12 months, $4.5 billion. And one of the ways we have, according to the IMF program, is issuing an international sovereign bond of $1.5 billion in 2027 and another ISB in 2028. So, of course, ratings matter for that. End of 28, we have to be around 15.7 billion. And of course, 2916, and by 30, we have to cross the $17 billion mark. So these are projections. And of course, these hits will make this very, very complicated if it lasts longer. And of course, in 28, as you know, it's not a big rise, it's a rise of $1 billion. But currently, external debt servicing we're doing is 2 billion a year. So in 28, we will be restarting the payments on bilateral debt, the principal. So it will go to from 2 billion to 3 billion. So that's also another factor to be taken into account. So with that, I'll come to the end of my this thing. I mean, I can speak more, but considering the time, the opportunities I see, of course, a major, if a condition I would put is if we do the correct reforms and other things, there are areas which we could capitalize. Of course, there's a long way to go, and this is a long-term plan. Of course, ports, renewable energy, where we have our advantages, a Yarline hub, because now those, I think others like Singapore and others would benefit most from this. Data centers. The reason I say data centers, of course, for data centers, we have regulations and others to be taken into account. And also, we need a secure supply of electricity, which currently we don't. But if we put it as a plan for like 5 to 6 years down the line, that could be an area, because if you see Iranian missiles attacked data centers in the Middle East. So if you, as I said in the beginning of my talk, 20%, the largest investment around the world going forward is into data centers, 20%. 1/5 of global investments is going into that. So that is an area we can definitely capitalize on, because one of our advantages is that we're the only South Asian country which has good relationships with all other South Asian nations. So that's a strategic advantage we have. But of course, these opportunities are subject condition to structural reforms. Of course, coming to my nearing the end, the medium term, of course, we need to accelerate structural reforms. We definitely have to. Costs are high. We have some of the highest business costs, highest electricity prices, vehicle prices, food prices, so construction prices. So liberalization in one term. I mean, of course, the example I always give is Japan in the 1950s. So when we took a look at economic planning, many countries look at a plan on which sectors to develop. What Japan did was they found out which sectors were unproductive to shut down. So when you shut down the unproductive sectors, the resources automatically go towards the more successful or productive sectors, which is what we need. Okay, improving export competitiveness, that is definitely a must. Investments. So currently I'm consulting for the European Union on an investment climate report. So there are challenges in that front. Strengthening fiscal buffers. So that is one thing that I would say this government is focused on, which is very positive and is going to come handy this time. But long term, we need to focus on energy independence, sorry. Because about $4.5 billion, even if you look at oil at $70, is moving out of the country. If you take the exports of, for example, apparel for $5 billion exports, we import around $3 billion worth of inputs. And if you take, so the net tea export is only 2 billion. And then you have tea, rubber, coconut. So from all these four sectors, what we earn as dollars is just going for oil imports. And this is not something we should need to. I mean, if you see a World Bank report, we have offshore wind energy, which exceeds our demand. So that's one thing. Not only that, we have solar, hydro, one of the highest river densities in the world. If we do the correct reforms, a grid to India, we could be a net energy exporter. That's where our comparative advantage could be. And lastly, we need a diversified growth model, diversified to different sectors. Because if you look at sovereign ratings, one of the factors is always why developing countries have lower rates when compared to developed nations is because the economies are more diversified and there are stronger institutions. So these are two factors. Currently, on institutions, I would say the Central Bank Independence Act is one very, very positive reform that's come out of the IMF program, but we need to strengthen more our institutions. And with that, I'll leave it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for your presentation. Thank you to all our distinguished speakers for those thought-provoking presentations. Kindly send any questions on Q&A. We will now move into the panel discussion and question and answer session, which will be further explore the key theme discussed. It is my pleasure to introduce our moderator for this session, Mr. Dinesh Veerakodi. He is the chairman of Union Bank of Colombo PLC and the Employers Federation of Ceylon, and he will be assisted by Mr. Brian Joseph, Vice President, Head of Treasury, Union Bank. Sir, we are honored to have you guide this session. Joining the discussion today, we have an esteemed panel, Dr. Kulathunga Rajapaksha, Emeritus Chairman, DSI Samson Group, heading a large footwear, rubber manufacturing, export, retail leading conglomerate. Mr. Hasitha Premaratne, Group Managing Director, Brandix Lanka Limited, largest apparel exporters from Sri Lanka, with manufacturing facilities in India and a number of other countries. Senior Professor Buddhi Marabe, Senior Professor at University of Peradeniya. Mr. Ashoka Hettigoda, Chairman, Hotels Associations of Sri Lanka, with tourism being a major export earner for Sri Lanka, and Managing Director, Siddhalepa Group, major producer of Ayurvedic products and services, including hotels, hospitals, and spas. Mr. Niraj Dimel, member, former chairman, Tea Exporters Association, former chairman, Sri Lanka Tea Board. Currently, he is the chairman of Ceylon Tea Brokers PLC. Mr. Rohan Maskorale, founder and CEO, Shippers Academy, expert on matters relating to shipping global and local. Mr. Jeffrey Zulfa, Chief Executive Officer of PICME, a leading transportation company using a digital platform and app. We are truly privileged to have such a diverse and accomplished panel. Without further ado, I would like to hand over the session to our moderator, Mr. Dinesh Veerakodi. Over to you, sir.
Mr. Brian Joseph will take over. Yeah.
Yes, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. Good afternoon. Am I audible?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, yes, so thank you for the opportunity. I'm Brian Joseph. As the lady rightly said, I head the treasury at Union Bank, so I'm stepping in for Mr. Veerakodi. So I'll dive right in. the first question I would like to pose is to Mr. Masako Orala, since he's the expert on shipping. So the buzzword currently is the Strait of Hormuz and the closure of the strait. But what I want to know from Mr. Masako Orala is, do we have any opportunity that we can latch on to because of these disruptions to shipping? I mean, Sri Lanka sits smack dab in the middle of a busy shipping lane world over. So do you think there is any positives that we can, or any positives that come our way in terms of shipping, and Sri Lanka being in a spot of that matters in the shipping lane wise? Your thoughts, Mr. Masako?
Thank you, Brian. I hope everybody can hear me. Yeah, I mean, diving into the future here, basically, I think whenever there has been a global crisis, including the COVID in the recent past, Port of Colombo has been benefiting short term. That is due to congestion happening in other ports. We suddenly get demand for shipping opportunities in the Port of Colombo for transshipment and discharging of containers. But we don't have to look at it in that format. We need to look at it. The question you're asking is probably long term. Yes, Sri Lanka has a much great opportunity, which we have lost or missed the bus for probably 30 years. As all the other speakers talked about reforms and corrections and the legal environment and investment environment, you name it. We've not done the right thing, and actually we have lost business. For example, today Port of Colombo is ranked at 24th in the world, a rank above last year, but we should have been very much above, somewhere around 15, because we had a lost opportunity for about 4 million containers because of capacity restrictions and policy issues. So yes, I mean, this current environment has a definite demand for ports, other ports, including Colombo, even India's west coast, and also Singapore is also having serious congestion because of the demand for discharging of boxes that were going towards the Middle East and rerouting of shipping lines, a lot of confusion in the transport network. So yes, there's a short-term gain as well, but what we have to look at as a country is how we can position ourselves as a long-term alternative to all these what we call choke points. So we are sitting between two hotspot choke points, which is one is Hormuz and on the west side of it, and also of course there's one near the Red Sea, near Yemen, and also the other one is the Malacca Strait. So Sri Lanka is middle of all that, which is very much open to the Indian Ocean. But sadly, we have not capitalized on what we have, and our ports there are natural ports of Trincomalee and also now the Hambantota and Colombo. Sri Lanka has the opportunity, but there's a lot of work to be done on that front.
Okay. Still staying with you, how do you see the freight costs? I mean, obviously it must have shot up lately, but and also, do you see the risk premiums on the insurance going up as well? And even if, say, assume the war ends today, right now, how would that pan out for the next maybe couple of months, or even at least the next 6-month horizon?
Yeah, so the disruption is getting severe because of the war becoming more intense into energy, not only transportation, but also the infrastructure now. As of today, there has been attacks on the infrastructure, which is very worrying. Even if it stops today, that could drag on the problem for another 2 quarters or more. So the question you ask is that the current situation, yes, freight rates have doubled in some trade routes. Some trade routes it's tripled. The main index for container shipping is the Shanghai Freight Index, which shows this. For dry bulk and bulk vessels, it's the Baltic Index that also has shown similar increases. Yes, war risk surcharges and insurance premiums have doubled or more, resulting in high freight rates. And also the fact is that there's capacity loss because more than 1,000 ships are stuck in the upper Persian Gulf area, which cannot pass the Hormuz at the moment. For example, generally about 140 ships pass a day, but for the last 2 weeks, total ships that have been passed through the Strait of Hormuz is about 98 for the last 15 days. and some of them have got attacked also. So things are not looking rosy at the moment. And also, as a result, ships that were going from Asia to the Middle East carrying various important things to those markets have turned back and returning to other ports because they are unable to move forward. Even the Red Sea area is not being used by most shipping areas, so they are avoiding Suez Canal. So we are back again to the old problem which had with the Yemenis. So ships are going to the Cape of Good Hope in South Africa, which is adding, that can add about 21 days extra transit time. So there's a shortage of ships as well as the expansion of time of delivery. So supply chains have got really disrupted, and yes, the freight rates have really skyrocketed. And we will see that impact here also, whatever that we are importing. And also one key factor is the bunker fuel. Bunker fuel is the fuel that is pumped onto ships. Now, Fujairah in Middle East, it was the world's number 3 supplier for bunker fuel. So Fujairah is almost shut 100%, which means the bunker fuel has really shot up to nearly 150% of what it was. So that means ships running cost is 40% is bunker. So you can imagine the impact on the cost. And these are not going to settle down over a period of 1 month or something. It will, right now, we think the burst will come in the Q2, and then it can go up to Q3 if it continues as it is today. So that is how the overall market looks like, and it's not very pleasant. This supply chain blockade actually has a ripple effect on every possible act of multimodal transport. So it's whether it's airlines or trucking or whatever. So right now, Middle Eastern countries are looking at options of opening the land corridors through Jeddah and as well as Jordan to move urgent food items coming from the Mediterranean side up to Middle Eastern, that is the Saudi port. So they are also looking at alternatives to look after their population right now, their immediate needs, other than, of course, losing out their exports. So it's a very serious crisis. And I mean, we have a saying that when shipping stops, the global commerce starts stopping also. So which will lead to all these discussions that we're talking about inflation and the long-term effects and multiply effects of all this from tourism to XYZ will start because 80% of global trade is transported by ships.
Thank you. Yes. Understood. So maybe I'll get back to you later on something similar. So my next question I would like to pose to Mr. Hettigoda, who is the president of the Hotels Association. So I guess he wears multiple cap hats, and that is the hat I'm choosing for now. So in percentage terms, Mr. Hitikoda, where would you see the drop, or in terms of US dollar revenue, what would you assume would be the possible or probable drop for the next 6 months horizon, say, due to all of this unrest in the Middle East and one of the most important tourism routes being shut down?
Well, thank you, Brian. Currently, as you know, tourism industry makes 60% of its revenue in 4 months: December,
Okay.
January, February, March. Now, this conflict started in end of February, and yes, we still had some arrivals. Even to date, we are getting about 5 to 6,000 people arriving. Now, what we are missing is the European travelers. So we are seeing at least for month of March, 30 to 40% reduction in Europeans. So but that in revenue terms is, I think, more than 50% of Sri Lanka's actual revenue. Because as you know, 2025, Sri Lanka had more tourists than our flagship year of 2018. But in terms of revenue, we were 30% behind, because actually the number of Europeans who visited Sri Lanka in 2018 versus 2025, there was a huge shortage. So now that was clearly evident. The tourists that we are attracting, may that be Indians, may that be others, are not the high spenders. So even though in head count, we are down only 40%. I think in terms of real revenue, we are down by at least 50%. So this is my indication so far from all the hotels cancellations we have received. I think we are losing at least 80 to $100 million a month. And the booking forecast for the summer is really dreadful. Right now, most hotel chains would have got some booking forecast for May, June, July, and we are not getting any real numbers other than Asians that are primarily Indians or Asians coming here. But that I see also many tourists are looking at value for money. As all the speakers who spoke before me said, the cost of products are going up, whether it's the airfare, whether it's the cost of a bottle of alcohol, food. So people are now looking at, okay, how much can I buy for the dollar before the crisis, after the crisis? So many tourists are now looking at, why are we going to travel? What is the reason for us to travel this summer? Are we going to spend twice the amount of money for the same services, or shall we wait? Shall we wait till the crisis finishes? Shall we wait till next year? This is a very difficult situation, and I think Sri Lanka will be. I mean, even to date, we are seeing some notes from the European Union, actually from UK. They have put a travel advisory saying that do not visit Sri Lanka due to fuel quotas. You might get stuck halfway through. Now, I think we all know the government is trying their level best to issue fuel for hotels, travel agents, and part is already implemented. We are still awaiting the issuing of fuel for hotel generators. But for hotel vehicles, now there is a system in place. But I think world over, there is suspicion created. Am I going to get stuck halfway through? What is going to happen if I get stuck? So there are tourists who come to the airport and asking for a QR code. You ask why? No, I want to make sure that I don't get stuck halfway through. So this uncertainty is creating really a huge disruption. And in the tourism industry, normally people don't care about these travel advisories, but now people do care because you are going to get stuck in some country. There are still travelers stuck in Middle East. There are still travelers stuck here in Sri Lanka who have not been able to return to their countries. So with the war uncertainty, what happens every night. So this, I am sadly thinking that we are going to be severely impacted.
Okay, one more on the same topic. Now, we saw during the pandemic and even the height of the economic crisis, like when tourism flows sort of thinned out, uh, we saw a move by the local hoteliers to attract local tourists. I know that is not a problem solver because the revenue streams are not as high as the tourists would come in. But how do you see that panning out? Because as bankers, even we were discussing on, we have this credit card promotions that we do, and are we going to increase it for the locals? We had this discussion a couple of weeks ago also. Are we going to, give out rollout plans for the local tourists, because when the foreign tourists sort of peter out, maybe we can replace them. How do you see that? What sort of an impact could that have, or does it have no impact at all?
No, it's the local tourists have always come in and helped the hotel industry. But I mean, this situation is little different, I think.
Okay.
Because I mean, we still hope that hotels, credit card companies, banks will still come up with some scheme to offer discounts, special offers for locals, because right now, by April, most hotels will start showing very low occupancy numbers, and that many hotels will find it difficult to pay salaries to their staff. Of course, most good hotels, well run hotels, make enough money, as I mentioned before, from December, January, February, March. That gives a cushion for the next 8 months. So I think so some hotels that run with very thin margins will have this issue, and certainly local travelers will be most welcome. And we hope that the QR code for fuel, various other things that make life little easier will not be a hindrance to local travelers. And also the impact on the war on the economy, cost of living, the gas, everything else is kept under control, because otherwise that will really have an impact on a local traveler. Local
Right.
travelers will get stuck. But the difference last time versus this time is that Sri Lankans who had money could not travel outside because they could not use dollars. Now that option is open. You still have Thailand,
Interesting.
you still have Malaysia, you still have Singapore, you still have Vietnam. Traveling to that part of Asia, they have already declared special offers. Yes, airfares may have gone up a little bit, but maybe some of the top end of the Sri Lankans might think, for peace of mind, I will go to those countries for 8-10 days. I will not have to worry about power cuts, or I will not have to worry about fuel quotas. I will not have to worry about my gas cylinder running out. So that option was restricted during the economic crisis. So even the people who had money could not travel abroad. So now here, in this case, there are no restrictions on foreign travel or foreign currency expenditure. So I am still hoping that more Sri Lankans will come to our hotels. But there is, of course, a caveat in that.
Interesting. Thank you. So I'll get back to you as well when I have the next round of questions. I would like to direct the next question to Dr. Rajapaksa, who happens to be the Emeritus Chairman of DSI Samsung Group. Mr. Rajapaksa, now you are part of the ecosystem of the local industries. So my first question to you is we see the cost of inputs rising, and obviously, you must be using inputs for your produce. So, how do you see this? How do you see the very quick impact on your industries, especially the MSME and the SME industry?
Whether Dr. Rajapaksa is still not come, I think. I can't see him.
Okay, okay. So then I'll move on. I'll move on with the
Yeah.
questioning. I'll direct this to the next person. So is Mr. Premaratna from
Yeah.
Brandix on?
Yeah, he's
I'm
there.
here.
Yeah.
I'm here.
Okay, Mr. Premanath. So this one is for you to take a jab at it. So just give me a ballpark figure, at least on the short term, mid term, and the long term impacts. On your line of producer, especially your exports of garments. So how do you see it in the short term? Have you seen any impact right away, especially on the costs rising on your inputs, as well as the appetite that you see abroad for your products, short term, mid term, long term, based on the current scenario?
Yeah, so I think if you look at the immediate picture, it's not significantly adverse because the orders are already in place and the shipments are moving. So we haven't seen, at least till I think from the time it started, I would say till the next couple of months, we don't see too much of damage on order books, neither the costs as well. But beyond April, I think if it or beyond March, if the situation continues to stay at the current level, then we probably will have some significant impact on the cost structure. Because obviously, as you know, The challenges are primarily around the raw material cost related to the synthetic fabrics, which the base raw material being petroleum, and then some of the dyes and chemicals that are being used in fabric manufacturing also come into play. So these costs will start going up on the raw material front. Then the utility costs, especially the diesel, furnace oil, and the other expenses, and even the electricity, there is a possibility of the prices going up. So those are likely to hit us in the short run. I mean, from about say April onwards, these will start impacting in a meaningful way. And then third angle will be the freight charges. Wherever we have imports already, the freight charges have gone up and is going up. So freight charges will be another big concern that will come with it. So the cost escalation in these areas will be meaningful, but beyond April. At the moment, it's starting to show signals, but bearable levels. But it can go beyond from April onwards if this situation continues in the same magnitude, especially if the oil remains at these price levels. So right now, our focus has been to secure the fuel, which, as you all know, government approved a couple of days back for exporters to source or buy the fuel through the bunkering companies. So we have already started to go through that route and secure fuel to support the transportation of our workforce, where we have large workforce where we provide transport, and then also for the goods transport, the lorries and containers that can do inland transportation of the goods. So that's another very important part. So both of those, we probably can use the diesel from the mandate that has been given, but for some of the other staff, especially the executive staff, the current quotas that have been provided are not adequate to continue the work in the same way. So we are introducing carpooling and some of the other possible solutions to support that for people to come to work and continue the production. So that way the production related work can continue without a disruption. So that's our main focus at the moment. While we do that, medium term, like you said, if I say short term is till April, end of March, right? And then
Yes.
maybe medium term is from, let's say, April to June or April to
Correct.
somewhere there. So that's about a 3 months from there. So that period, the medium term impact will be significantly on the what you call the cost escalations that I spoke about. The long term is beyond 3 months. That's how I would define it right now. And that is where probably if the inflationary pressures come in and the US and the European economies in particular slow down in their retail buying, then our customers will also, our brands will also start reducing the purchases or even coming out with cancellations. So at this stage, we are not seeing that. That's the good news. We are seeing the order flows continuing to the next quarter as well. But beyond that, if the situation sort of stays at the same level of escalation or more, then that can lead to a demand drop as well. So at this stage, too early to comment whether that will materialize, because at the moment, I think there is also expectation that any moment this can stop, right?
Correct.
So that's another thing. Tomorrow morning when we wake up, sometimes we might see a ceasefire and the whole game would have changed to another
That's right.
place. And we know how the US leadership operates these days, so it can be any moment, right? So because of that, we don't want to take any harsh decisions in the short run, and things are moving in that direction at the moment, like I said. So short, medium, long, I will define in those timelines and look at how we are kind of securing the short term to continue the delivery of goods as planned. Medium term, managing the cost escalations and looking at how we need to reduce cost and attack the wastage and various other initiatives to see how to keep the cost under control, plus the possibility of passing on to the customers some part of that cost escalation if possible. Third part of it is more challenging. If the demand drops globally, then that's going to be a tough one again. And don't forget that the export industry, particularly apparel, have been just coming out of a huge storm of tariff impacts, which in February, when the US Supreme Court reduced or at least made the null and void, the rates came down from 20 to 10% for Sri Lanka. and things were getting a little better in that context. But just within a week, this next drama started. So we don't know what the next drama will be next quarter, right? So we have to keep our eyes and ears open and be ready for the next challenge that may be posed.
Okay, and on the possibility, have you factored in, a possibility of power cuts, perhaps? Or, I mean, are you maybe it may not come to pass, but
Yeah.
have you have a contingent plan for that, contingency plans?
Yeah. So from what I know at the moment, the daytime power cuts are very unlikely because we are generating as a country a significant amount of solar, about the 2.7 gigs of solar power, which is in excess of the demand. So it's unlikely that till about 4:30 that there will be power cuts. So it's probably the peak hours, which is probably 6:30 to 10:30 or 6 to 10 time frame where there can be possibility of a power cut situation, if at all, right? At this stage, I think government also is not talking about it, and I don't think it will happen in the next month. If at all, if it happens, it might be the maybe end April or beyond if the situation keeps escalating. But very unlikely situation. But if that peak time impact sets in, we do have the diesel generators. So we will try to do that. We have been given the authority to work with the imports to see how to get our fuel through the bunkering fuel side. In particular, we should be able to run the generators and operate wherever we are running the night shift. Most of the factories do complete the production by 5:36, but some factories run the night shift, especially the textile, and also some apparel factories also run a second shift. But those slots we will have to manage with the diesel generators, which we all have as backup. And now that we have the avenue to secure diesel, I think that's the primary thing. If we can secure the diesel, I think the fuel electricity power cut impact can be mitigated to a large extent. That I don't see that a big issue at this stage.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Premaratna. So I think I'll move on to our senior professor. I hope he's logged
He's
in.
here. I'm here.
Okay.
I'm here.
Okay. The Professor Marambe from the University of Peradeniya. So I thought I'd ask something along his lines of interest or his lines of expertise. So as you know, it was only last month that we saw food inflation come down after a couple of months, maybe 5 months. Food inflation was on the rise, and it came down only slightly. So in terms of what's going on in the world, I mean geopolitics and all that, and its impact on Sri Lanka, what are your thoughts on our food security as a nation? What kind of impact would we have with everything going on in the world as it is right now?
Yeah, thank you very much for that question, and thank you, Professor Vatavara, for inviting me for this occasion, for this important event. Well, the question, if I try to answer, is in this way. I mean, all these global wars in the past, I mean, had a very complex combinations of impacts on economies, and agriculture is not any exception. And the hidden devil that I see in all these wars is food insecurity. Mr. Hittigood made a very interesting comment that for a visitor, for a tourist, you can decide why I should go there right now. Why not wait until the things become normal? But for a person to get his or her food needs, you simply cannot wait. And that is the danger that I see, continuation of these type of wars, especially in the global scale. We may not get direct hit, but indirectly, we are facing problems usually. And what you said is quite correct, because Sri Lanka just has shown improvements. And to tell you one thing, take paddy production, for example, year 2025 was the year that we reached a very high standards in terms of production, paddy production, after 2021. So it's after a lapse of certain time period, we are showing improvement, and all of a sudden here comes a threat. I must say, a big risk for our food production, which will affect the food security. And we all know that agriculture alone cannot meet the food requirements of a country. Trade matters a lot because it affects us due to increasing cost of imports of agricultural inputs, including their production costs as well as the transportation costs. And then comes the availability of agricultural inputs to be imported in the world market. For example, fertilizer was spoken by many individuals, hybrid seeds, for example. And, I checked the fertilizer prices compared to the past few months. And as for the world market prices, the urea price just before March in the global scale, if we import it to Sri Lanka, costed about $450 American dollars per ton, which has increased up to 810 US dollars per ton just today morning. So it's not to say all of a sudden increase nearly double in one day, but that is the impact of the world market prices have seen because of the world war that we have been experiencing now. Now, one thing that we have to be very careful, we are discussing all these things, but remember, as I told you, agriculture alone, even if we get urea and other fertilizers at higher prices, we will not be in a position to fulfill our total requirement. And in order to import, food should be available in the world market. And that will be, I mean, even if it's available in a situation like this, it will be grabbed mostly by the wealthy nation. Like what happens in a scarcity situation that Colombo supermarkets get cleared due to panic buying. And these things happen. We have to understand that situation. We cannot block or avoid those things, but this has to be understood when we decide and plan for our future. Because they take, for example, India. India is our closest neighbor. In 2023, India banned export of non-basmati rice to any other country, including Sri Lanka. And at a time that we mostly wanted rice, India was not an option at that particular time until a certain time period is passed by. And India is the second largest urea producer in the world and the highest urea importer in the world as well. But India cannot export urea by policy, by statute. They cannot export urea. You remember in 2022 when Sri Lanka had a problem, through the Indian credit line, we received about
That's right.
60,000 metric tons of urea. But that is a shipment that they ordered from Oman, which was derouted to Sri Lanka. It didn't go to India. You have to understand that aspect, because if it had gone to India, India will be in trouble in exporting it to Sri Lanka. Now, if you look at the in-country situation, we all know that fuel costs, availability of fuel will have a negative impact on agriculture, because agriculture has got mechanized heavily. Mechanization has improved productivity and food production. No argument about that. But the mechanized machinery will require energy supplement. So that's where, especially when it comes to land preparation and harvesting, in the case of paddy, there is some main staple. There are a large number of machines being used to a greater extent in Sri Lanka that has to be supported. And I learned even the QR code is in effect for agricultural operations. That will be not a limitation. There will be no limitations in having fuel, but how it's going to be managed will be an interesting situation. But beyond that, fuel and electricity cost, which is inclined, what I see is there's going to be an increase according to based on my own estimations. The electricity cost will also increase the transportation cost. We simply cannot miss milling cost, storage cost, and more importantly, had the household cooking cost. All those matters a lot when we look at the future. And while saying so, I must tell you, Minister of Agriculture has taken certain measures right now. Just 2 days ago, with the support of the private sector organization, they have decided to market whatever the fertilizers, urea fertilizer especially, that is available in the market at a price of 9,500 rupees per ton, if I got the value correctly, to the farm organizations, but at a level or rate decided by the National Fertilizer Secretariat, who have all the respective data with respect to monthly as well as district-wide utilization of fertilizer. So that's a good move, at least to make sure fertilizer is available. Market flow is there. Those are important aspects for people to at least to find some sort of relief in an uncertain situation like this. And one important thing, what to be done in the future. As far as I see, when inputs are limited, when a crisis situation is there, I think we have to do a prioritization. Crop prioritization is going to be a must, not to be done today or tomorrow, but there should be a careful analysis in doing so. To me, I think the 3 crops that we should provide priority is paddy, that's the human food, maize, mostly for animal feed. Finally, animal also become human food. And the third one is tea. That's the main export agricultural crop that we have. Because tea is a specific crop. I know Niraj is here in this panel. The important part is when tea started getting plucked, It's plucked every 5 to 7 days. Huge amounts of nitrogen being released from the crop, creating a stressful situation for the crop in order to provide productivity in the long run. Unless you provide the nutrients correctly at the correct time, urea is the key. I know there are other sources as well, but still that provision is extremely important to get the country out of this trouble very quickly. I mean, also see government has taken correct moves right now. I mean, we know there's a problem with respect to Hormuz Strait. I mean, a lot of members explained this, so I'm not going to talk about it right now. They have gone into a G2G kind of arrangement, business arrangement with China. China is our main supplier of urea, and they are going to get, government is planning to get a certain amount of urea for the Maha season, mainly aiming at paddy cultivation. Sorry, the yellow season. Maha season is ending, bear with me. Yellow season is to start and to support the season's cultivation. And all these things, one thing, even the supply comes in, I think we should never forget that the prices are to increase. And that's the natural phenomenon in this type of situation. Our exports have also got affected. I heard many speakers speaking about the exports. So all in all, the final thing is uncertainties are very high these days. I'm a person who works a lot on climate change and climate change adaptation. I thought climate is the biggest uncertainty or risk factor that we have. No, now we see it's a human being themselves. That's the biggest that we have. So it's climate, political, geopolitical, all those things are in combination creating this havoc. And we have to prepare for it, not to run away from it. We cannot do that, but to prepare for it. And although I said agriculture alone cannot provide our food security, what we have to do is to make sure agriculture should have its maximum contribution in achieving food security. That's the target we should have. That's why I say those three priority areas are extremely important. So all these uncertainties will be the order of the day for a foreseeable future. That's how I look at it. And of course, being your organization as CMA, you have a bigger role to play as I see it now. New formula will have to come. Costing have to embed the uncertainties that are there. So cost of production is something that we are going to look into. We have to look into. That will depend on the output prices as well. I mean, we know that our people, the purchasing power of our people, we have to address both farmers and the consumers at the same time. And only way that can be done is a properly designed costing procedure with the support from the Department of Agriculture, Agrarian Development Department, and other entities like the research institutes. It's a combined effort that should go in to make sure that to weigh our checks and balances of future, ensure country will not enter into a food insecure situation. What you said once again at the very beginning, saying that the food inflation has gone down. I mean, highly likely chance is it will increase, but we have to keep it in mind and make sure it's been balanced in such a way that is going to be affordable to our people. Thank you very much for the opportunity granted me.
Thank you, Professor. So I'll move on, I think, to Mr. Niraj Dimel. So he's a member of the Tea Exporters Association. So I think I can put across a question with regard to the tea industry directly to him. So I think the biggest concern right now on our export front is tea, because one of our major buyers is in distress. They are involved in the war. So can you tell us, Mr. Dimel, like what again is the immediate impact? Do you see, obviously you must be seeing what, in terms of foreign currency earnings, dollar terms, what kind of an impact do you see right away? And what kind of impact do you see if this prolongs for the, say, next month or at least another 2 months? What kind of an impact for the whole of the year will you see in terms of foreign exchange earnings?
Let me start. First of all, let me thank Professor Bhattabhala and CMA for inviting me to represent the Tea Exporters Association and the tea industry at large. Let us first look at the Middle Eastern countries together, who are the largest importers of Ceylon tea. They account for about 55% in terms of our export volume and about 50 to 52% of the foreign exchange earnings that we earn out of tea. And what are those teas that are going into that region? Is a typical type of tea that come from the low-grown sector, which accounts for 2/3 of national production. And who are the producers of these? Almost a 500,000 strong smallholders who have their plots of land in maybe 1/8 hectare or 1/8 acre, quarter acre, things like that. So this entire sector, not only Iran, Iraq, which is the largest importer of Ceylon tea for the last 4-5 years, all those sectors have closed down. So the initial reaction, I would sort of break it up into it. Initial reaction was don't ship any tea that is consigned to anything going towards Iraq, Iran, Kuwait, Syria, Jordan, all those Middle Eastern countries, and even attacked countries like Saudi Arabia and Dubai. Now, Dubai is a very strong transit port for Ceylon tea, where through Dubai, a lot of tea goes in even to Iran and Iraq, in addition to direct tea exports going to Iran. As you know, we are just about completing the oil for tea barter that was put in place during my time at the tea board 3 years ago, where Sri Lanka had a huge oil bill to pay, which we couldn't pay because of US sanctions to Iran, amounting to $251 million. And I can tell you the good news. As at today, we have settled $190 million out of the $251 million, because Iran is a very huge tea drinking country. They, at the best of times, they would consume about 50 million kilos. And Sri Lanka has done close to that, about 35 million through the direct channels to Bandar, to their port in the Tehran, the Iranian port, and another 15 million kilos coming via the Dubais. So that apart, there is Saudi, a very lucrative market for Ceylon tea, which is among the top 10, 12 importing countries. There is Dubai, there is Syria, there is Jordan. All those countries are important. So as I said, that's the big equation, and that's how important they are. So immediate reaction, short term, was that most of our exporters to that region.
Oh,
Hello.
oh.
Hello.
Yeah, there's some disruption. If whoever's using can mute their.
Yeah. So exporters were told, those who have had confirmed orders in hand, that were processed and ready to be shipped out, they were told to hold up shipments. That was the initial reaction. And some that were on the waters were asked to be turned back. Then certain exporters had to face this horrendous situation where the shipping agents, those certain shipping lines, just offloaded the cargo at different ports of refuge, as they call it, and said voyage ends here. So that has put the exporters in a kind of a quandary. But having said that, the tea auction per se, if you take it, because that's what matters coming internally to the country and what trickles down to the grower. Auction, yes, it did impact negatively. The very first auction after the breakout of war. But the good news today is that 3 weeks down the road, we have had 3 auctions. The prices seems to be stabilizing. On inquiring, I understand that so many other countries are coming in with orders and even with advance payments. So maybe they are trying to cash in on the situation, so that those who would have put off buying till about late summer are trying to pick up teas for 2 reasons. One is it may be good value. The other reason is that we do not know what will happen medium to long term to the shipping routes. Whereas our other markets that take in less than the Middle East areas, the shipments have now begun to go via the Cape of Good Hope, but it's a longer route. And as you know, shipping agents, as Rohan Masakorala also shared a while ago, there are surcharges added on, war risk surcharge and insurance, which we don't know how much. So all that is going to eat into the ultimate tea price that is being paid to the farmer. So that is the impact that is awaiting, though right now there doesn't seem to be much of an issue. Long term, if this is not settled, there's going to be huge repercussions, because we are going into national new year, and after that it will be the southwest monsoon, and the tea production is going to increase. There is warehousing capacities that we need big time. The warehousing capacities among the tea brokers and among the tea exporters would be insufficient to take in and keep unlimited period tea stocks without moving them out. There has to be an ongoing roller basis where you buy your teas, collect it from your warehouses, process it and ship it out. When that channel is given a full stop, then you have to keep stocking those teas. So cheap warehousing has to come in. Warehousing, as you know, is very, very expensive at the moment. So that has to be looked into. The borrowing issues take place. So the borrowing, the interest rates will have to be looked at. The taxation that's imposed on the tea export sector across the board is another area that has to be taken note of. And then if the power cut should come in as a result, as a consequence of what is happening there, the tea factories, most of them run with diesel generators. So there has to be a very simplified way in which, unlike what happened in 2022, a simplified way in which they have easy access to fuel to keep on running their factories to process the green leaf that they bring in. Unless they manufacture the green leaf that particular day itself, it's going to be useless in terms of as an end product. So these are the areas that has to be taken note of, because if the situation gets worse, I sincerely hope not, then of course the take home for the farmer is the ultimate point where he's going to suffer big time. As it is, what he's getting is getting little by little diminishing. So that has to be looked into. But how we are going to do it is, I don't know, because Sri Lanka has been over dependent on this market because of we had the right type of tea that suits the waters of the Middle East. So that's why we are at an advantage compared to other producing countries like Kenya and India and all getting into the Middle East. Now, this over-dependency has in itself has become a backfiring operation for us now, where we are getting affected by depending there. So we need to, long-term, of course, that's a long-term thing. We need to go and see where else we could market this type of tea. So this is, in a nutshell, how the industry is contending with this situation right now.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Dimel, you were speaking of taxes and you said something in passing on taxes. Are you in conversation with the government? Is it corporate taxes you were speaking of?
Well, there is VAT being imposed now at auction level. So that is passed down to the producer. Producer has to pay VAT. All these came in the last under 1 year. So all those are actually eating in right now. Okay, there is a payback coming in, but still for all, you know how the system works. So it's the ready cash in hand, because basically green leaf suppliers are paid by the factory owners then and there in most cases, right? So you need cash in hand. So it's a kind of a hand-to-mouth operation. And then in the grand scheme of things, as Lannath also presented, definitely structural changes will have to be looked at big time, because Sri Lankan tea industry is working on very thin margins, if not none at all, compared to Kenya. They have even at a much lower rate. Kenyan tea auction price average is about $2.50, whereas we are $4 plus. But our margin is so thin that we could not hardly do any kind of infrastructure development. But they are doing big time. Even at $2.50, they have a very decent margin. So these are the things that has to be addressed. But those are all going long term. But we need a solution in the event situation should get worse from now to the next 2-3 months.
That's right. Understood. Thank you. So another interesting gentleman on the panel. So I'll now direct my question to the CEO of PICME, so Mr. Zulfa, who's on the panel. Well, many of the other panelists were speaking of, disruptions and, locally on this QR code, rationing and all that. So before we get into what sort of impact your line of business has due to this, fuel queues and all that. But I'd like to ask you something different, which is your line of the organization that you represent. You provide solutions for the public. So that is what PICME is. So have you thought of providing solutions for this for the disruptions in the distribution of fuel, as well as food? Obviously, yes, you have PICME Foods, but have you thought of any innovative products where you could come in and help, maybe perhaps provide a solution for the public or the government in this sort of a crisis situation?
Well, I think we are obviously trying to understand.
I'm not trying to put you on the spot. Just a general question.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, we always, we want to serve the community, we want to serve our country, as a company, and as a Sri Lankan entity as well. So, obviously, we are trying to understand and read the situation on the ground. Obviously, this this QR system or the fuel quota system kicked in on Sunday. Saturday, things, as a country, we were moving very fine. People were going from point A to point B. People were, getting their groceries and their food delivered. So we saw fantastic. I mean, we obviously saw the build up to the Sinhala Tamil New Year as well. So we generally see that 1 month ahead, and we saw that happen. So obviously, as a QR as announcement kicked in Saturday night, we saw the disruption, right? So our job is to make sure we can get people from point A to point B, or move a good from point A to point B, and that's what we are focused on. And then we provide the technology for that. Hasita talked about using things like pooling solutions and all that. We work with thousands of companies, and we are trying to see whether we can now provide our fully pooling and commute solutions to these companies, so that they can use the infrastructures that they have to move their staff and stuff like that, right? So we are working with the right people to make sure that we are able to efficiently move people around. Now, obviously, the situation is very different. Because we played a key role in the last incident as well, but things have changed from what it was before, right? So there's 2 pointers. One is the electrification. I think we are seeing we have a lot more EV vehicles on the platform. I think the numbers are still small in terms of the total fleet. We are about 5%. And another change that has taken place is that we now have two-wheeler taxis, right? People actually hop onto a two-wheeler today and go from point A to point B. Today, we move over 100,000 people on two-wheelers, right? So that has also now taken place. So I think when it comes to, if you look at the forms of transportation, right? Public transport is a very big space, right? And buses are the most efficient, right? You put more people into a bus and get them from point A to point B. Your utilization of fuel is far better than any mode of transportation. Then second comes two-wheelers, and then third comes three-wheelers. A two-wheeler can do about 80 kilometers a liter, and a three-wheeler can do about 25 to 30 kilometers on a liter, right? And obviously, cars and vans are not the most efficient, right? So, I think I wrote a small article around it, and I think what we need to do is be a little smart on how we go about, dispersing these quotas carefully, right? Because what we want is to make sure economic activities continue. We get people from point A to point B, get them to the offices, get them to their homes, but do it in a very efficient way. Last time when this happened during the economic crisis, we made special arrangements with the government, so that we can, because we have the data, we are able to understand who's working and who's not working. So we provided drivers who are working on the platform, or working on our platform, extra quotas, because we can then get people moving. So that's an arrangement we did last time, and we are urging the government this time also to do that for us, so that because the good thing is that we have the data, and we can always come back and say, this guy has done 100 kilometers a day, and we should give him a little bit more, right? Now, if you look at the situation now, the three-wheelers, I know that three-wheelers are the bad actors, but also they are the good actors, right? Because they can move people much efficiently than a motor car can do. I think so. We need to be able to identify these three-wheelers and be able to give them a bigger quota, because what now the government has given is 15 liters, which is essentially not enough, because a high engaged three-wheeler does about 200 kilometers a day, right? That's a high engaged three-wheeler. Our average trip is about 6 kilometers. It's about 6 kilometers, right? So so if you just do those math, you will understand that the efficiency is much higher. Now, to move a person on a three-wheeler, it's about 0.2 liters, whereas in a car, it'll be about a liter or so, right? So the burn on a car is much higher than on a three-wheeler, and obviously on a two-wheeler is much lower. So if you just sort of look at it in a more macro level, I think we have to be a little smart on how we go about allocating. Obviously, buses stand right on top, because buses need the fuel to commute a lot more people. and that will get the engines going in the economy, right? So that's what we are trying to do. Again, to answer your question, we are looking at the ground situation and trying to understand how do we how can we deploy our technology to provide much efficient solutions on the ground.
Okay, thank you. One more thing. Does the government, I mean, any government for that matter, engage you in try to understand how travel patterns work, and for data collection, or academia at least? I mean, the universities. Do you engage with them on regular
Yes.
basis?
Yeah, no, 100%. They do. We obviously provide a lot of our data to the Central Bank of Sri Lanka, and we
Okay.
also engage with the ministries, providing them the right input. So obviously now, they've also reached out to us just to understand, what they need to do. So we are trying to give them that input.
Okay. So thank you. So now I wonder if Dr.
He is
Vijayawardena.
there. Dr.
Yeah.
Rajapaksa is there. You can ask.
Dr. Rajapaksa is there. Okay. So there was one question I wanted to address to him. Especially as a SME who represents the SME, Dr. Rajapaksa, how do you see the current revolving situation impacting you right away, or do you think it has not impacted you to the full extent? And if so, how long will it take? And especially on the economic front also, how your ability to borrow, to expand, and especially your costs, especially on wages and all that. How has it impacted and right now, and also how do you see it impacting maybe in the coming months, from a standpoint of the situation would escalate from this point onwards, or even if it stays the same? Your thoughts on that, Dr.
Well,
Rajapaksa?
together with CMA, I work with footwear and rubber sector. So when industries are based on footwear and rubber sector, and with that we work with the area of SME sector as well. Because we work on some different lines. So SME, lot of SMEs are on the supply chain. So the rubber and footwear, as far as concerned, depends 99% on imported raw materials,
Okay.
which are mostly petroleum based. So when the petroleum base is affected, all our raw materials are affected. Right now, all our rubber products, raw materials, and synthetic rubber prices has gone up almost by 50%. And further,
50%.
yes, they've gone by 50%. Because most of them are petroleum-based products. So when the petroleum-based products goes up, naturally the subsidy products also and all goes up. So to add that, the shipping delays and shipping charges and insurance charges have gone up. So therefore, right now, we are facing a serious situation of supply delays, especially even to meet our export orders, because these various tensions that is taking place. Our shipments are being very badly delayed. And new orders, they are asking for higher insurance premiums and even the freight charges. So these already, it has affected. Unfortunately, we do carry a large inventory on this thing. So therefore, our companies are going on for about next few weeks. We can manage, and we have only 3 weeks to the single New Year where we get the holidays. Therefore, we are trying to manage, because these 3 weeks, our factories to run our factories. But only question here is, customers, the buyers are not accepting orders right now. And petroleum product manufacturers, some of the companies have been already under attack. Therefore, the companies have been closed out. So therefore, the synthetic rubber factories, out of many, some are already destroyed. So therefore, naturally, the supplies are affected, then prices have gone up. So therefore, the rubber products, not only the local market, even we do have export orders. Even export orders, we are unable to comply because of that involves a lot of petroleum-based raw materials. Then we are supplying raw materials to the SME sector to manufacture and supply to us. So we are unable to give the basic raw material because of the supply situation. So therefore, right now, since we are all our rubber factories and shoe factories are carrying inventories up to 3-4 months, we should be able to manage. We are trying to manage as much as possible for the next 3 weeks, because by 3 weeks we get holidays. Those 3 weeks we should be able to manage, but after that we are in a sort of a dark situation, because all our orders that have been placed has not been executed, and they are asking for delayed shipment. So this is a very serious situation. So we think we will face a crisis situation after New Year. Right before New Year, probably we will be able to manage. Another point is about the power cuts. Our most of the rubber factories are very heavy power consuming factories. So they work 24/7. So we are unable to stop the factories one shift, because those are continuous lines. Some of the lines we are running for 365 days, 24 hours. We can't stop them. Stopping and starting itself is a very costly exercise. So these are the few things that but whatever said and done, we may have to face the situation. Because this is a situation which is not by controlled by government, so we have to face the global crisis. So we are adjusting ourselves. But if the night working tariff goes up, it's okay, because we can always work with our generators during night, and daytime we can work, because all are equipped solar panels and all that. And very few companies are not using solar energy. So all of the companies are using solar energy. So therefore, we are trying to manage the energy cost. But still, for all, we also feel that this should end within next 1 or 2 weeks. If we're not ending, definitely all rubber products and shoe products and petroleum products, we will have to face the serious situation. And more than that, fuel crisis. Fuel crisis, of course, all companies are employing a lot of workers, more than 1,000 per factory. So we do have to provide transport. Group transport is provided. So therefore, we need fuel for transport of workers, and if that is not happening, there's again a problem. So we are right now, we are managing, and we are hoping that within next 10 days, the same situation will continue. But if it extend beyond that, probably we have to accept some sort of a disturbances. Thank you.
I see. Thank you. So, as I understand it, your level of tolerance would be only 2 weeks. So that is very
Yes.
concerning. Yeah. Thank you.
Yes.
I wonder if Dr. Vijayawardena or Mr. Rafi is still.
Brian, I think
Yes.
Rohan has to go up by about 4:30. If you have any questions, you can put to Rohan Maskoral.
No. Thank you, Mr. Masakoral. No, none at the moment.
No, Dr. Vijayawardena is there.
Okay. So I want to pose the next question to Dr. Vijayawardena. So on this on the policy side of, central bank policy side, what do you anticipate, Dr. Vijayawardena? Because currently, if you look at from a banking perspective, there's ample liquidity in the market. Overnight liquidity is fine, but there is pressure on the exchange rate. But I think central bank is managing the volatility also at the moment. But as far as the interest rates are concerned, we've seen a spike in the short term, or rather the treasury bill rates have been subdued, because the central bank, or rather the PDMO, is they're able to manage the short term rates at lower rates. But the bond rates, interest rates have spiked by about 20 to 30 basis points during the last 2 weeks. So how this is solely because of the uncertainty, yes, but do you see any significant policy shift from the central bank side with regard to the current, to ease the volatility in the market?
Well, what would happen is that the central bank's biggest problem would be if the inflation rate rises above its upper bound of the inflation target, that is 7%, central bank will have to take restrictive monetary policies. I am sure that the inflation rate will go up because of the rise in the energy prices and all other prices, non-food prices. But of course, the food prices will not go up, as Professor RBI has said in this Maha season. We'll be able to maintain the food prices, but after Maha season, the food prices will also go up. So central bank in medium term, not immediately, will have to follow this restrictive monetary policy, which means interest rates will have to be increased. And as a result, as I have mentioned in my presentation also, the government was enjoying a honeymoon of low interest rates right now, but that honeymoon will be over. So as a result, the interest rate will go up. But with regard to the exchange rate, all the economic models that are present today tell us that the exchange rate will have to depreciate. But there are several reasons. Reason number one is the inflation rate is going up. Number two is the foreign exchange inflows are dwindling. Number three is that the central bank will have to maintain a proper balance in the current account of the balance of payment. So because of these reasons, the exchange rate will have to be permitted to be depreciated, but we cannot say at what level. But we know the direction would be downward direction. So that is the short term to medium term policy package which the central bank will implement if the war is prolonged, maybe beyond March.
And Dr. Vijayawardena, from the government side, now we saw during the last 2 years or so, capital expenditure wasn't forthcoming. I mean, they were holding back, and so that has built buffers in the primary surplus also. So how do you see that panning out? Do you think they might use up those reserves to give relief to the public?
Well, those resources cannot be released to the public, Brian, because
Okay.
that's actually, it has happened as you very correctly mentioned. The capital expenditure program given in the budget was about 1.3 trillion per annum, but what was spent was over 600 billion. So there was a under expenditure on the capital side, meaning that we will have bad roads, bad buildings, bad infrastructure facilities, and so forth. But the money that has been kept in the bank government account in the Bank of Ceylon amounted to 1.3 trillion surplus, which the president has said. 700 billion had already been allocated for the Ditwa funds. But that was appropriated by Parliament last year. So before the end of December, the money was, paid to the relevant government expenditure agencies. So we have a little or more than 800 billion now, and that 800 billion will be gone once Sri Lanka starts repaying its debt. This particular accumulation of a surplus of cash within the treasury was due to the non-repayment of the principal amount of the debt which it had contracted. So once we start, repaying that money will also be gone. So therefore, the money cannot be, given back to the people. But of course, there are expenditure items that have been earmarked for spending that particular surplus. And Brian, you will be noticing that except from 2022 to 2025, in all years, the treasury account was a deficit. It had been overdrawn.
Correct.
Like an overdraft. So this will happen again.
Okay. So thank you, Dr. Vijayawardena. So thank you, everyone else.
Yeah. Excuse me,
There's
Brian.
nothing from yes.
Brian, can you ask Rohan Maskorali? He has to go in another few minutes. Any questions you have on the transport sector, shipping and others?
Yes, hold on. Yes, he has said 4:25 he needs to leave. Yes, so Mr. Masakorala, we spoke of the shipping area, I mean, like the shipping in international waters. So how do you see the internal transport sector, I mean, within the country, and especially within other countries as well, especially the Middle East, and because of the rising costs of fuel, obviously. So do you see a stagnation? Or do you see the various governments coming to help them out in any way? Is that a possibility?
So you're talking of trucking and other
That's
modes
right.
of transport.
That's right.
Yeah. So, I mean, trucking remains a component of the global supply chain, and obviously the fuel prices have gone up, so that trucking will definitely add for domestic inflation as well as international inflation. So we've seen this scenario in 2020 onwards, with 21 onwards with the COVID. The global supply chains actually started breaking off from China, and then it started breaking from United States. And once the global supply chain started breaking, it just doesn't stop at ships. It actually becomes a problem at ports where the trucks get congested. and that actually led to a lot of inflation pressures in all countries. So as we see, countries like Australia themselves having pressures on trucking, because that's a large country that depends on long distance trucking. So already we have seen, even in the developed world, the trucking is becoming a issue in terms of costs, and obviously it's going to be the same here, because right now there are constraints of pumping in adequate capacities. So hopefully the export sector has been looked after by the government, specifically by giving special status as essential service. So in the short term, I don't see a problem in the domestic trucking industry, but except the cost going up, and I think the costs will further go up. Looking at the current prices, at now it's nearly reaching again $120. So the futures market is such that we will see a further increase in container trucking cost and domestic distribution costs. So that supply chain connectivity will definitely not be helpful to manage the inflation levels, or manage the inflation levels at the targeted 5%. If we can do that within the 5% targeted of the central bank, then of course the pressure on the system will be less. But things are not very rosy as at this moment, so we will have to wait and see, because even things like LPG and gas coming from the Middle East is becoming a serious problem, because today we saw the attacks on the gas fields, which is a new development. You see, we were looking at all these last 10-12 days of disruption of transportation. Now it's about disruption of storage in the Middle East, and also the disruption of production. So when that happens, even if the war stops tomorrow, the recovery period is going to be Q2 or Q3 for prices to come down. Because if you look at that part of the world, it's about $5.5 trillion per GDP. So all those economies are going to get affected. So that will have a ripple effect. Even if it stops tomorrow, we are not going to get back to normal within this quarter or end of next quarter. The results in terms of cost of all these are going to escalate, I think, in the second quarter most likely.
I wonder if you're the right person to ask this, but I still ask. I'll still go ahead and ask, and if you are not in a position to respond, it's fine. Still being on this subject of LPG, we saw supply chains disrupted a couple of weeks ago with nothing to do with the war, actually. Like where you saw storage was an issue, I believe, for LAF gas. So you think that will exacerbate? Obviously, it will, but to what degree? You think we would be left with longer queues on the gas supply more than fuel because of that, because of the dual impact of the two issues?
Yeah, so there are two things. What I heard from the official channels is that the government has placed orders up to end of this year, kind of channels, which is good, which is the good news. The bad news is the availability of ships. The availability of ships is the problem right now, because if you look at the charter market, for example, a tanker cost about $180,000 or less than that for a day before the conflict started, a big tanker, but now it has gone up to nearly $300,000 for a day. So the demand is so high on the ships. Every country is trying to secure their minimum levels of stock. So that pressure is there on the supply. So not only gas, we have the same problem, which I highlighted in another forum, that even the supply of coal is going to be a problem, because the ships are not available as we want. The frequency can break. That is the only danger, but I think the order book has been placed. So if that order book comes along, I think we are secured until the medium to long term. I think some of our gas can come from the Far East also, which they have stocks, and if they have booked in and confirmed, if that looks a bit more safer, but things can change as the whole situation escalates. I hope not.
Okay. So I think I can let you go. Thank you, Dr. Masakura. So yeah,
Mr., not Dr. Mr. Thank you.
Mr. Okay.
Thank you.
I think you deserve it,
Thank
but
you,
still.
Brian.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you, CMA and
Thanks,
Lakshman.
Rohan. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sorry that you had to go, but I'm sure that you will.
Okay.
That helped, yeah.
Okay, I have another one at Bank of Ceylon. That's
Yeah, yeah. Thank you. Right. Okay.
So yeah, so that is it from my side. If there are any questions that have come up
I think there is
through,
a Q&A. There are a number of questions.
yeah,
I don't know.
sure.
Yeah. You like to take them up and
At the moment, I can't see them.
shall I have got some of them. Mm. Yeah, actually, there is one question here on the depreciation of the rupee. Whether they are asking whether the Sri Lanka rupee would depreciate any further. So I don't know whether Dr. Vijayawardena is there, whether he would like to take that up. Is he there or?
Yeah, Professor Vattawala, as I have mentioned in answer to the question raised by Brian Joseph, he has said that all the indicators are that rupee will have to depreciate. We cannot hold on to the current level because the inflow of the foreign exchange is dwindling. At the same time, the foreign exchange expenditure is going up, and also the inflation in Sri Lanka is picking up. So all the three reasons are reasons for the rupee to fall in value. But we cannot say at what level it will stop or what level it will fall. What we can say is that rupee will depreciate. Definitely it will depreciate. We cannot, Sri Lanka cannot hold on to that particular, level of value.
Thank you. There's another question. Brian is on to what extent can Colombo Port City and the Port of Colombo position the country as a competitive alternative in sectors such as logistics, IT, BPO, and financial services? Maybe, I know Dr. Vijayawardena, if you can talk on the financial services with the Colombo Port City and Port of Colombo, is there any comment you can make? Or Brian, you may be.
Yeah, Professor, whatever there's a misunderstanding about this Colombo Port City. Port City is not part of Sri Lanka, it's outside Sri Lanka, and all the companies that are operating in Port City will have to maintain their accounts in foreign currency, and possibly they will not maintain their accounts with Sri Lankan banks, they will maintain their accounts with overseas bank. Therefore, any inflow to Sri Lanka is not a part of Sri Lanka's foreign exchange reserves. Because what we consider as foreign exchange reserves are the reserves which are within the control of the central bank and with the control of the Sri Lanka's banking system. But Port City will definitely can attract more funds, specifically when Dubai has now fallen. Many of the international companies might set up their headquarters within Sri Lanka's Port City, and they might buy and utilize Sri Lankan services, employees, utility services, and so forth. To that extent, Sri Lanka will benefit. So it will be a kind of a growth that will take place outside Sri Lanka without giving a direct benefit to Sri Lanka, because its value addition is a part of Sri Lanka's GDP.
Right, thank you. Brian, I don't know, since you're also in the finance, do you want to talk anything on the financial services there in the question?
Well, Dr. Watawala, some of the local banks also have applied for licenses. So as Dr. Vijayawardena said, though it's a common misconception where people think that since it's actually it's as if we are sharing a border with another country. So that fund flows are separate from us. And as Dr. Vijayawardena rightly said, I think the benefit, if at all, if any, would be sort of by way of rents, and I think by way of whatever taxation or whatever payments that may be due from renting out that land is how I see it. I may be wrong in that, so I don't know. I am not gone into detail on the legislation. So not much of an impact for the local banking sector, but the tax benefits, say for example, say if Union Bank, the organization I represent, if they manage to get a license and operate out of that, yes, they'll be entitled to a lot of tax benefits. So that is a ready gain that we see that we can benefit of right away. But apart from that, it remains to be seen what else sort of opportunities that it pretends it portends for us. Yes, we have. You could think of it this way, where you have a country that is operated and functioning under foreign rules. It's actually a foreign country, but it's close to our borders, and Sri Lankans can access that as well. So that is the only short way to describe the arrangement.
Yeah, just
Thank
to
you.
add, you
Yeah.
said, Brian, now you can apply to Port City Authority for a license to operate there, which will be approved by the central bank immediately. Then you are just like an offshore bank, and you
That's
will
right.
benefit out of that. And my advice is to do that, because otherwise the foreign banks will come and do a business,
Correct.
depriving that deposit to Sri Lankan banks. And my advice to all the Sri Lankan banks is to get the approval from the Port Authority to set up branches, which are like, offshore banking unit. And you'll be able to, continue your business in foreign currency, borrowing in foreign currency, lending in foreign
That's
currency,
right.
and, make a capital out of that.
Thank you, Dr.
Perfectly
John
right.
and Brian. There's a question for Zulfa. What impacts do you see on digital platforms like PickMe will face due to increased fuel prices and limited availability? What strategies you think could be adopted to face such challenging environment? What type of distribution does the rider network has in terms of petrol versus I think for your riders, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't
So,
know.
happy to take that question. I think
Yeah.
we are seeing a 30% drop in supply.
Mr. Zulfa, you're breaking up. I think there's
That's affecting us. That's affecting the public. So, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Can
Okay.
you hear me?
Yeah, you're back on.
Brian,
Yes.
can you hear me?
Yes,
All
we can
right.
hear you
Okay.
now.
All right. Okay. So I think, So like I said, are not able to find the fuel that they need to come and serve the public. So this is essentially going to affect supply that is available for the general public, and when the fuel regulations came into being on Sunday, we saw a huge drop in supply. So to balance that, our algorithms had to increase prices. So that took effect on Sunday itself, and hopefully now we are seeing the prices dropping. So this is gonna, because if supply is low, what we can only do is increase prices so that supply can come back again. So typical demand and supply at play here. So I mean, obviously we don't want to operate at high prices. We want to see how we can drop it, right? And we will try to figure out ways of doing that. We have things like incentives that we give our drivers so that they come back to work. Now obviously coming back to work is a tough one because they have to get fuel. And we are basically providing them with information on where the fuel sheds are open, right? Every morning we have a team that goes around checking on fuel sheds just to understand when the buses are coming, so that we can sort of inform our supply base. So these are small things that we are doing to improve supply. But really, what will take effect is prices will go up, right? If we can't bring up supply onto the platform. Now, demand has also dropped because prices are high, which is also not favorable for a company like us. We want to see demand coming back, because we move a lot of people. We move about 1 million people a day. So it's important for us to keep these dynamics working well on the platform so that we can move people from A to B. So to answer that question, we want to, it's like pooling, can we run pooling? Pooling, we've seen in other markets that pooling works. Sri Lanka, we tried it about 3-4 years ago. It didn't work well because our society doesn't like to share a vehicle with another person. But obviously the circumstances that we are in, we may have to fight out and see. I don't know how the public will take it, but if things get worse, we probably will switch on capabilities like that.
Thank you, Zulfar. There is a question either for Dr. Vijayawardhan and Talal Rafi and of course to Dhananath. What is your forecast on the strength of the US dollar with increasing war expenditure, maturing US treasuries, alternate currency payments? What is the composition of our CBSL reserve and would a deterioration of a US dollar affect the reserves? Dr. Vijayawardhan, he's gone now. I think he's gone.
He doesn't seem to be
Yeah,
online.
right. Okay, then I think
So I'll take a jab at this. So what we currently saw was, yes, there's a lot of talk of alternating. I mean, moving away from the as a reserve currency. Yes, it's true. But what we've seen is just before the war, the dollar was depreciating against gold, and gold was appreciating like there's no tomorrow. Right, it broke 5,000, 5,100. But just as the war began, I mean, as the first missiles started hitting Tehran and the oil refineries and all that, we saw dollar appreciating against all currencies except the Swiss franc. The dollar appreciated against all currencies, and it is still, as of I'm looking at the screen right now, as of half an hour ago, also, except the Swiss franc, the dollar has appreciated against all currencies. Why? Because still it is considered as a flight to safety during turbulent times. So that will take some doing for the market to get out of that. And what people don't realize is it's Europe that holds most of the US treasuries. Europe holds about 30% of US treasuries. Many people assume that it's China, it could be other countries. China holds about 9%, but it's Japan and Europe who hold almost 50% of between 50 to 60%. So that has a big impact. So they are not going to move out of the US treasuries anytime soon. And it is only when they do that you will see maybe perhaps the US dollar crash. So currently the US is riding high, and it might be so for some time. And if U.S. Treasuries, the yields go up, which it has, the 10-year, the benchmark 10-year and the 4-year has moved up by about 5 to 6 basis points, which is huge in U.S. terms. Even when that happens, still then at a higher yield, the U.S. Dollar would be desirable as compared to any other currency. So maybe so sometime in the future, maybe a year from now, maybe 6 months from now, I cannot say. But currently, if the question is the US dollar going to decline due to the war? The answer is a clear no at this point.
right. Brian, what you can do is you can give a final round to all our panelists who are there now. Maybe I think
Yes, so that's right. So I'll try to, get one question out of them. So I think we covered most of it with Mr. Masakorala. And if Mr. Hettige, if he's still on this.
Mr. Hettigood, Asuka Hettigood. Asuka, you're
Yeah,
there?
That's right.
Yeah,
Asuka Hettigood. Okay. Since you're like the president of the Hotels Association, how do you see the per day, there's this minimum rate stock and all that. So with all of this going on, do you think you may revise the per day charges that you charge in order to incorporate more tourists, or is that not thought of at all?
I did not understand your question about per day charge. We don't have a.
You have this minimum USD
No, that was
100
long.
thing that you.
That's
That's
no,
no more, right?
no. That regime is no more for the last 3 years.
So informally, there's no price that you agreed on either. It's
No,
dependent
there's
on
not that.
individual.
It's supply and demand, totally.
Okay. Okay. So apologies. I think I had the wrong idea about that
Yeah.
one. So how do you see the costs per se of the industry itself going up? Now we looked at the 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 patronization of the hotels, I think, is what we spoke of earlier. So from a cost factor, how do you see prices going up, and how much of a margin will thin be owing to that?
Well, actually, in the last 3 months, average salaries for lower end staff had been increased by 50%, because the minimum salary was 21,000 in year 2025. By January 2026, it became 30,000. So suddenly 50% increase of salaries.
Okay.
And then last 2 weeks, fuel and gas increase, prices were increased. That indirectly increases all the food supplies, suppliers who bring materials to hotels, all that had gone up. All the laundries that are run throughout the country, primarily they run on gas. So the cost of laundry materials, all have gone up. Overall, cost of operations have increased significantly from last year to this year. So especially in the last month and a half. So we all hope and keep our fingers crossed that electricity tariffs will not increase. If that also is increased, that it might even be considered the death knell for tourism in Sri Lanka, because compared to our competing neighbors of Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia, we are, without any increases, we were already our costs were much higher. So that's why some people complain at times our rates are higher. You can go to Bangkok, spend 3 days and come back, and it'll cost less money than going to a 5-star hotel or a proper resort here. So if these costs continue, even attracting Sri Lankans might be challenging, because we are at a higher cost base. So we are hoping that electricity tariffs will be maintained as it is, and at least for the tourism industry. And we are hoping that the government will look at attracting more airlines using Hambantota Mattala as a eighth base, or there is some technical term where allowing foreign airlines to bring in passengers and take into other destinations. Let's say, for example, Etihad, Qatar, Emirates have so many airlines now parked in various European cities. They have passengers stuck there who have flown in from, let's say, Singapore, who have flown in from Japan, who have flown in from Australia. Now they were supposed to come from, let's say, from UK to Dubai to Japan. Now we have requested the government to allow Emirates to operate Maktala as their hub. So they'll bring passengers from London instead of to Dubai. They'll come London, Maktala, Japan. So that way we will bring passengers at least to the country. Sri Lanka will gain by not by trying to charge a higher fee on jet fuel or whatever, but at least providing food services, etc. And then maybe offering a one-night complimentary stay or whatever, or giving a discounted stay in Mattala, right, to break the journey. This is how Dubai was built up. All the Emirates and those other airlines initially used to offer one-night complimentary stay for all business class travelers.
Okay.
Right. And this would be an ideal opportunity where they are trying to figure out solutions how to bring back the travelers who went through these airlines from Asia to Europe. So we are also telling the government to do a little bit more marketing on MICE events that had been planned in Middle East, weddings that have been planned in Dubai, to bring them to Sri Lanka, to give them some concessions, do a little bit more marketing for that. And also some 4 million Indians travel to Dubai on holidays. And if we can somehow divert part of that to Sri Lanka by giving them some special offers, increasing flight connectivity. So these are some of the options that we have communicated to the tourism authorities to focus on, to see how best we can mitigate the impact of loss of revenue from not having European travelers. So we are all keeping our fingers crossed. The government will at least pick up some of our proposals and at least keep the tourism industry going.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hettigoda. So to
Thank you, Professor Vatavala. I have to
thanks.
go for another meeting.
Yeah,
Thank you for giving me this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Asoka. Thanks very much for coming.
So I'll move on to Senior Professor Marabe. Is he still logged in?
Yeah, he's there. He's there.
Okay. Any parting thoughts, Professor, on whatever? I think something may have crossed your mind after all these eminent panelists spoke. So any parting thoughts for us?
One critical issue would be to discuss with the regional partners, Brian, that's especially with respect to inputs and the food itself. And that is the plan that we have to have for the future. Again, once again, I'm not talking about this Maha season. I'm talking, something that goes beyond April, May, June. I think that's what Dr. Vijayvardhan also said a while ago. And that's the area that we have to target right now. But in order to have our requirements fulfilled, discussion should start now. You cannot delay. That's an important message, I think, you have to give to the government. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor.
Can I ask one question from Senior Professor Buddhi? Actually, now with these prices going up, especially with the fertilizer, what is the sort of what will really happen to the agriculture?
I mean, let's first try to make sure there is availability of material, Professor Vatavala. That's a clearance and mind clearance thing for many of the people. People know there's uncertainty right now. Although the price tag is 9,500 for 50 kg bag, when the new imports come in, the price values will change. So it will not affect the initial stages of the next yellow season also. It was really towards the latter part. So we have a little bit of playing time, buying time in order to design it. But that's not to say we delay the G2G discussions that we need to initiate at this particular moment. Thank you.
Thank you. And let me finally move on to Mr. Hasita Premaratna. Is he? I hope he's
he's
logged
gone.
in.
He's gone.
He's gone. Okay.
Mr. Niraj is there. Niraj.
Okay. So, Mr. Dimel, your final thoughts on what we've spoken of today? Anything you can offer us to take home?
I like to stick around what Professor Buddhi Marambe finished off with. Fertilizer. It's critical even for the tea industry. We know the debacle that happened a few years back, and as a result of that, we are still suffering and trying to regain our true potential of our tea production. Having seen in newspapers and through media that 20% of fertilizer movement is from the state of Hormuz. Now that's going to be critical. Of course, we have a Russian option, but I don't know how compatible that product is for our tea soils. So that's one aspect starting from the grower side. And of course, definitely this area of definitely there's going to be setbacks for deliveries or shipments going out of the country. And as a result of that, government has to step in without trying to depend on tea board or institutions like that. They have to engage them, but there are a lot of warehouses available in this country belonging to the government. I think the former Janavasa themselves had a lot of warehouses in Garan Pass. There's state plantation warehouses, a lot of them in Papiliana. Going beyond that, there are so much of warehouses available, underutilized. These are what they must earmark, spruce it up to a hygienic level and make sure it's available for this overflow or the spillover tea to be stored. Because the way things are, to get the structures back in track, back in up and kicking and so on in the Middle East, is going to take a while. And how we are going to get that stuff out. Well, we got to help the importers themselves by, storing the tea here and waiting for a good day so that we could clear out start shipping teas back to those destinations. So until such time, we don't know how long, but we need to have storage space available. So that's very, very critical. And of course, as I shared previously, the financial impact has to be minimized to a great extent to keep the exporters alive.
Well taken, well taken. Thank you, Mr. Dimel.
My pleasure. Thank
So
you, CMA.
Dr. Kulatunga is there. You can ask Dr. Kulatunga Rajapaksa is there.
yes,
Brian?
Dr. Rajapaksa, you still with us. So yeah, parting thoughts, especially again on what probably could be maybe the government may step in to aid the SME and MSME sector. So your thoughts with regard to that? Do you think there are any pressures on especially on the financing side? Because what generally happens is when there's a downturn in the economy, then the SME and MSME find it a tough environment because I work in a bank. I know I sit on the other side of the table. So we also look at their, strained financials, and we have a tough time convincing our teams also to lend and to help them out when things get tough. So how do you see it? Do you see any strain on your finance ability to finance your operations at the moment? And do you see any strain going forward as well with given the current situation?
Dr. Rajapaksa, are you there? You're muted. Maybe he's not there. You can ask.
Maybe he's okay.
Yeah, you can ask Jeffrey Sulfa is there.
Okay. So Mr. Zulfa, okay, all I can tell you is parting thoughts for us. And just something caught my attention before, which was on the algorithm and how it changes. So I think what you were speaking of was search pricing, was it? So how much of a difference from say a month ago to now is that? And then you can give some final words for us.
I don't have specifics, but I can tell you prices have been coming down, right? Since the recessions, obviously we've seen a lot of price drops coming in. That's because of the competitive nature of the space. So this has helped obviously customers. Now, obviously, in the last 3 days, we have seen prices go up. I don't have a percentage per se, Brian. So surge is only an immediate effect that takes place because of say 5 o'clock, when everyone wants to go home, surge kicks in. But when we talk about these base prices are also driven by way of measuring demand and supply for the day. So these are algorithms that run on the background so that we are able to match both demand and supply. Now, there are many dynamics that come in play, right? Prices outside Colombo could be cheaper, in Colombo could be expensive, right? Because that's where the density is. So obviously all this comes into play. Like I said, our objective is to drop prices. It's not to keep prices high. We want to keep prices low. But when we are not able to match, that's when prices go up, because it is essentially a real-time platform that measures demand and supply. Yeah.
On a side note, from personal experience, I had this experience 4 days ago, I think, because sometimes I also use your platform as well as just I hail a tuk on my way in because it's easier than driving. The moment I saw that there were queues, I left my car at home and started moving around in three-wheelers. So what I noticed was the non drive hail app tuk drivers, they've resorted to their bad old practice of turning their meters off, which they did during the height of the crisis. So because of that, are you seeing a surge on your side in demand?
Yes, I think we have seen, obviously the problem has been supply. Supply has dropped, so which means we can't fulfill the demand that we are getting today. So that's why prices go up. Now the problem is we don't want drivers to go offline, right? Because if they go offline, we don't have supply. So that makes things even worse, because they could meet people on the road as people flag them down, and they'll negotiate rates. Now, I mean, I don't think
Exactly.
that's what everyone wants. So what we are trying to do is bring them onto the platform, sort of manage the situation, and provide our customers with a ride at a reasonable price.
Understood. So any parting thoughts for us
Yeah, I
with
think
regard to?
obviously we are again
Are
back.
you positive, regardless of what's happening around us still?
No, I don't think it's very unfortunate. I'm not. I mean, it's certainly a roller coaster ride for us here. It's very unfortunate. We just came out of Ditwa. Obviously, the economy was affected. Now we are back again on another cycle of downturn. So we need to now see how we can all put our minds together and turn this around. Of course, the government has a big role to play. They need to give us a lot of confidence. They need to tell us the ground situation very well so that we could adjust ourselves and make decisions so that as companies, we can continue and as commuters, they can also continue with their journeys.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you so much for your insights. Professor Watawala, I think we are done with all the panelists, I believe.
Right.
Over to you,
Okay.
Professor.
Right. Okay. Rakshika, are you there? Yeah.
Yes, Professor.
Yeah.
Thank you very much to our moderator, panelists, and all the speakers for that engaging and insightful session. So we hope today's session has provided valuable perspectives on the evolving global situation and its implications for Sri Lanka. So to conclude today's program, I would like to invite Professor Lakshmana Vatavala, President of CMA Sri Lanka, to deliver the closing remarks. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much. I think I must thank our moderator, Brian Joseph. I think he's done an excellent job. And
Thank you.
And also many questions that were given to our panelists and also some of our speakers. Really, I think were the current things that were happening, and have given also a good meaning to all our participants who are there. So let me thank Brian. I know that Dinesh has highly recommended you, and thankful that you are coming because he's also a banker. He's the Vice President and in charge of the Treasury operation. So I think he has a good knowledge of all the USD and all the others that are coming in. And so thank you very much, Brian, for all what you have done.
Thank you, Professor.
So also thank, I think, the others for the real important, the speakers we had, the three speakers. I think all of them, some of them have already gone, but Dr. Vijay Wadna, Dhananath, and of course, Talal Rafi, who gave us the initial introduction to the topics, and thereafter, of course, our panelists. I think we already have 3 or 4 panelists left here, but I must thank all of them who have really supported and then given frank comments on their sectors. I think Niraj Dimel, who was there, I think he's also a very experienced tea exporter. I was chairman of the tea board, so I'm sure his comments will go a long way. Asoka Hettigoda, which one of the, because you see, these are the real key sectors in the economy. That's why we really invited them. So I must thank them for accepting. Then Asoka Hettigoda on the tourism area. I think that's a key area that we are looking at. Of course, he was talking of how where UK again on the petrol rationing and they have really given some maybe comments to their travelers, and that will really affect us. So I don't know how whether we can get more travelers or whether we may have to see how the situation improves. Because we may not be able to give the services here. Now, supposing they come here and in the event that if fuel is not there, then there'll be a problem. And then Professor Buddhi Marabe mentioned that maybe the food security situation. So there are quite a lot of problems that are there, which we may have to look at. And if things become worse, then only we'll be really in a tight corner. So especially on the industry side now, what Dr. Kulatunga Rajapaksa stated is frightening, because they are one of the largest in the footwear manufacturing industry. They are also helping the SME sector. Now he was talking about the rubber industry and the problem of the imports of the maybe the synthetic rubber they are going to have. So if they are unable to work their factories, what is going to happen then the production? So I'm sure they are stocked for the single and new year, but after that, what's going to happen is something that one has to look at. So especially now on the agriculture sector, now again, Senior Professor Buddhi Marambe said that we are okay with the Maha season, and then for the next season, the yellow season, that we will have a difficulty. One of the most important things I think which everyone spoke of is the costing, the cost price. Now, in a lot of the sectors, we really find that this has not been properly done or properly maintained. And if the electricity prices go up, then again it's going to affect all. So the energy sector is really one of the key areas, and that was really pointed out by all our speakers and panelists on the energy sector. So we need to see how we can really manage it. It all depends how soon this whole thing will end up. And then, of course, I must thank Zulfika because Jeffrey Zulfika because they are really trying to see how maybe the digital platforms and the apps could really help not only the private sector, but I think if the government sector can also get into it and then use it. Now, what he was talking of his own services, how they are doing it, and one thing that he mentioned is that they have also, because of this demand that they may have to increase the prices. Now, all those things, what will really happen if this goes on for a long period of time? So we are really thankful to him, and also I hope that maybe even the government can make use of this, because like the public transport system, what he mentioned, if that is run efficiently, especially at this time, then definitely it will benefit the economy and also cut down the costs that will be there. So let me thank all our panelists. There was also, I think these are, and then of course Rohan Maskorale went off early, but he is also expert on the shipping area and what he mentioned. The ships again, the charges going up, the insurance going up, risk premium going up. So a lot of costs are involved in this whole thing, and those are the real worries that everyone will have, both in the private sector and the public sector. So once again, let me thank everyone, because especially maybe giving your time for all our, I think we had over 300 participants who are there. I'm sure that they would have all gained quite a lot about really what is going to happen, because most of them are either from our accounting sector or from the corporate sector, so that they can say able to help their own organizations in the different things that are going on. So once again, let me thank everyone, and then we will maybe keeping in touch. We'll also, I think some had wanted the recording to be given. Certainly, we will send that one to everyone so that they can use it and listen to what our speakers said. So thank you very much, and we do hope that maybe on another occasion that we can meet. But I do hope that will be maybe on where we are in a better position and not go
Certainly.
into the worst situation. But everyone will have to act carefully, and especially during this time, maybe that will really help us, because already we are cutting down various things, and whether all of us will have to work from home, that's another thing that we may have to see. So like the COVID period. So let's see. I'm sure all of them are really taking the precautionary measures in order that they will not go into a very critical situation. So I do hope that things will improve and we'll be all in a better position. So thanks a lot, and all the participants who were there. I think, as I said, quite a number still. A lot of them are there, and we do hope that this will really benefit everyone, and even for the panelists and speakers who were there. I think they also would have got to know about the different sectors, and then may be able to take the corrective action. So we will now wind up, and also I must thank our compeer and the secretariat who have been, Ms. Shanti, who have been helping quite a lot on the whole thing. although we did it in short notice because we thought that short notice we had to do it because it is a very important topic. And I think, as I said, Brian, thank Dinesh also for maybe
I will do that, Professor Vatavela.
sending you here. And he's our member also and has been helping us very much. And
I do know that. Yes.
right. Okay. So thank you and all the very best to everyone. And maybe we'll be in better situation when we next meet. Thank
Okay.
you. All the best.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Buddhi. Actually, Professor Buddhi is in Manila. He has linked up from Manila. So thank you very much for coming in, Professor Buddhi.
Thank you very much for inviting.
Right. Thank you. Right. Okay. So, okay.